O eternal and almighty God, from whom all power and wisdom come, we are assembled here before thee to frame such laws as may tend to the welfare and prosperity of our province. Grant, O merciful God, we pray thee, that we may desire only that which is in accordance with thy will, that we may seek it with wisdom, know it with certainty, and accomplish it perfectly. For the glory and honor of thy name and for the welfare of all our people. Amen. We acknowledge we are gathered on Treaty 1 territory, that Manitoba is located on the treaty territories and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, Anishinaabe, Dakota, Oete, Dene, Sulene, and Neothorg nations. We acknowledge Manitoba is located on the homeland of the Red River Métis. We acknowledge northern Manitoba includes lands that were and are the ancestral lands of the Inuit. We respect the spirit and intent of treaties and treaty making and remain committed to working in partnership with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people in the spirit of truth, reconciliation, and collaboration. Please be seated. Routine proceedings. Introduction of bills. Committee reports. Tabling of reports. Ministerial statements. Member statements. The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I am so pleased to rise today to celebrate the 90-year anniversary of the Sexuality Education Resource Centre, or CERC. CERC began as the Winnipeg Birth Control Society, established in 1934 to help women access birth control 35 years before birth control was legal in Canada. In 1976, the organization became Manitoba Planned Parenthood and opened a Brandon office. Responding to changing needs, they transformed into the Sexuality Education Resource Centre in 1997. CERC's mission is to promote sexual health through education, and their vision is one of a diverse society that celebrates sexuality throughout the lifespan. CERC provides youth workshops on healthy dating, sexual decision-making, STIs and HIV, gender identity and sexual orientation, mental health, and more. CERC does outreach in newcomer communities to support healthy relationships and parents communicating with their children about sex. CERC has delivered education through a phone-in helpline, a text helpline, online resources, and service provider training. They have also partnered with Kanekinichik to deliver culturally based sexual and reproductive health education to Indigenous families. Misinformation about sexual health has contributed to increased STI rates as well as increased hate targeting of 2S LGBTQ+ Manitobans. This makes CERC's work as important today as it ever was, and I am thrilled to recognize 90 years of service to Manitobans. In 2021, CERC adopted a unique co-executive director model to decentralize power and emphasize collaboration. I'm pleased to welcome co-directors Jillian Roy and Leanne Karen, along with other CERC staff here today. I invite all of my colleagues to join me in celebrating this milestone and the consequential work of the Sexuality Education Resource Centre. Hear, hear.
Sorry, the Honourable Member for Midland.
Honourable Speaker, Manitoba is competing at the World Robotic Championships. I am thrilled today to welcome and congratulate the Morris School Advanced Robotics team and their family and classmates who have joined us at the Legislature today. This is a smart and dedicated group of high school students who have worked together to build and code robots from scratch. Morris is the only school in Manitoba with a robotics team, and there are 40 individuals who are either competing or learning the ropes to join. Morris Robotics team Blue Bomber will be proudly representing Manitoba at the VEX Robotics World Championships in Dallas, Texas in May. We are joined today by members of the team, students Josh Hildebrand, Caden Grattan, Cody Dewick, Andrew Hildebrand, and Hassan Mustafa, as well as the team coach JP Jamieson and team mentor Sean Conway. Around 800 teams from 60 different countries are expected to participate, and this has been called the world's largest robotics competition by the Guinness Book of World Records. Morris School has two incredibly successful teams, Blue Bomber and Team Phillip. Both teams have been competing internationally with great success, bringing home trophies and design and judges awards. Competitive robotics encompasses many aspects of STEM education and encourages students to bring together engineering design, problem-solving, strategy, competition, and teamwork. Students have to regularly redesign their robots and shift coding in the moment. I want to thank the teams for providing us with a demonstration in the rotunda today. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to try it out. I learned I'm not very good at driving a robot, and these students kicked my butt. I hope my colleagues got a chance to visit the demonstration and see these robots earlier today. I want to thank the community of Morris for stepping up and supporting the Robotics program and our teams. Good luck at World Championships. We'll be rooting for you.
The Honourable Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Today I rise to recognize the incredible work of Susan Zook, Tracy Balagas, Natalia Sovinska, and Olena Gordienko of the Ukrainian Catholic Women's League of Canada at the St. Anne Ukrainian Catholic Church, along with their dedicated teaching team who have joined us in the gallery here today. Their efforts of teaching English through the ESL for Ukrainian Newcomers program are transforming the lives of newcomers in Manitoba. At a time when many parts of the world are experiencing great hardship, Manitoba has stepped up to provide a safe and welcoming environment to those seeking refuge. Often, one of the greatest barriers to success for newcomers is language. Recognizing this urgent need, in May 2023, the Ukrainian Women's League and the Ukrainian Canadian Congress Manitoba Provincial Council, alongside community organizations, launched a pilot program offering 3 ESL classes at Chief Peguis Middle School in Rossmere. This initiative has grown into a province-wide effort, with additional funding from organizations such as the East St. Paul Lions Club, the Knights of Columbus St. Anne Council, the Sir Thomas Still Foundation, the Winnipeg Foundation, and the Canada-Ukraine Foundation. The program expanded even further. Today, nearly 400 students participate in ESL training sessions across Manitoba, including in Russell, Morden, and Dauphin. These classes are about more than learning English. They are about building community. Thanks to these women and the relationships and partnerships that they've built, Ukrainian newcomers are gaining the language skills necessary to thrive in community and contribute to Manitoba's workforce. This initiative is a testament to the power of grassroots action, the dedication of volunteers, and the unwavering spirit of Manitobans in welcoming those in need. I want to extend my sincere gratitude to the Ukrainian Women's League at the St. Anne Ukrainian Catholic Church, the UCC MPC, and all those who have made this program possible. Your work is strengthening our communities and shaping a brighter future for all. Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and if I could please include the name of all of my honoured guests in the record for Hansard. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Roblin.
I rise today to recognize an extraordinary local business making a real difference in our community, Urban Lumber in Winnipeg. Founded by Mike McGarry and Carly Farmer, this innovative company is dedicated to sustainability, ensuring that trees removed due to disease, storm damage, or urban development are given a second life rather than going to waste. Located in Charleswood, Urban Lumber specializes in reclaiming Winnipeg trees and transforming them into high-quality hardwood products, from live-edge slabs to custom furniture and even charcuterie boards. Their work not only preserves the beauty of these trees, but also provides an environmentally friendly alternative to traditional lumber, reducing waste and promoting a circular economy. In fact, they even made use of the trees that were removed here from the Legislature last fall. Beyond their business, Urban Lumber is deeply committed to community impact. They support Inner City Youth Alive's Step Up construction program, helping provide materials for skill-building opportunities. They have also contributed to projects with Teen Challenge and various school groups. This spring, their generosity will be seen in the new park along Graham Avenue, where they are donating benches and natural playscape materials crafted from downtown Winnipeg trees. Additionally, Urban Lumber works with Habitat for Humanity Manitoba's Restores, supplying eco-friendly wood products that support sustainability and community development. Urban Lumber also donates offcuts, ensuring that every part of the tree finds a purpose. Honourable Speaker, Urban Lumber is a shining example of how local businesses can drive environmental responsibility and community support. I encourage all of us to consider the benefits of repurposed wood in our homes and businesses. I've had the pleasure of touring their sawmill and seeing firsthand the beautiful products in their showroom. At a time when it is more important than ever to support local Manitoba-based businesses, I am so pleased to highlight this very cool business in the constituency of Roblin. Please join me in welcoming our guests from Urban Lumber who are here in the gallery today. Mike McGarry, Carly Farmer, Doug Cook, Jesse Marr, and Teresa Kennedy.
The Honourable Member for Radisson.
Honourable Speaker, March is National Nutrition Month, a month that provides everyone with the opportunity to learn how to make well-informed food choices and develop healthy habits. Whether it's sharing a snack with friends or preparing a cultural dish with family, food brings us all together. It's the source of so many cherished memories and a bridge that keeps traditions alive. That being said, food is also a major determinant of our health, of our well-being, and of our futures. What we eat and whether we have the opportunity to eat matters. Even with this widespread knowledge, letting certain children go to school hungry was the status quo under the previous government. Meanwhile, Manitoba's new team knows that kids can't learn on an empty stomach. Further, it's wrong to pick and choose which children get to succeed in this province. Last year, we introduced our universal school nutrition program so that every child in every corner of our province has access to nutritious meals and snacks, setting the stage for a national movement. This program has already set Radisson students up for success at Bernie Wolfe, Joseph Terrace, Transcona Collegiate, Radisson School, John W. Gunn, École Voie de Prairie, and soon enough, the new school in Devonshire Park. Nutrition means the difference between a distracted child with a grumbling stomach and a child equipped to achieve their full potential. This is why, under the leadership of our Premier and Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning, Nello's Law will ensure no future government can ever revoke a child's access to good food in school. Honourable Speaker, food connects us. And with our government school nutrition program, we are helping children across Manitoba stay connected to opportunities at healthy and successful lives. Thank you.
Prior to oral questions, there's some guests in the gallery. I'd like to draw the attention of all honourable members to the public gallery, where we have with us today Tim Chapman, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the International Peace Garden, and accompanying him is Dwight McCauley, former Chief of Protocol for the province of Manitoba. We welcome you here today. Oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, a key component of any economic plan for a province or territory has to be the harvesting and development of their mineral resources. Unfortunately, the Premier signed the LEAP Manifesto pledging to keep minerals in the ground. And the NDP's Budget 2025 continues this anti-mining attitude with a cut of 4.5% to the Minerals, Petroleum and Geoscience Department. All Manitobans are excited to see the Alamos gold mine breaking ground in Lynn Lake, but we all know a gold mine doesn't pop up in just 17 months, Honourable Speaker. It takes years of support and investment. That is what our PC government did. Then why, Honourable Speaker, Speaker, is this NDP government drastically reducing support for mining development and geological surveying when we need it most, Honourable Speaker?
The Honourable Minister of Health, Seniors and Long-Term Care.
Honourable Speaker, the member opposite would do himself a service to read the budget. Actually read it. Yeah. Read the budget. 25-26 budget, $3.7 billion to build here in Manitoba. Our government is doing the work that the failed PC administration refused to do for 2 terms of their time in office. We're actually investing in strengthening our province's economy, including a new gold mine, which is going to create a ton of jobs, great jobs for Manitobans right here in Manitoba. I'd encourage that member to read the budget instead of just talking about high-level talking points from whoever writes his notes.
That's right.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, it's tradition that the Premier usually stands up and answers questions in this chamber, but unfortunately he must be still upset with the fact that he signed that LEAP manifesto and the fact that his budget cut 4.5% from that mineral exploration budget that this health minister stands up and crows about. This Premier leapt to conclusions that we're anti-development and anti-economy. We know he stands by his pledge because he has refused to commit to signing on to the East-West energy pipeline. At a time when industry is losing faith in the NDP government, they double down and bring forward Bill 11, imposing more conditions after the fact. Industry needs a partner in government. How does this Premier expect anyone to come invest when he wants to change the rules at the drop of a hat, Honourable Speaker?
The Honourable Minister of Health, Seniors and Long-Term Care.
Honourable Speaker, Manitobans sent that side of the House a clear message in the last election. They said they were done. They were done putting up with a PC team that didn't prioritize putting Manitobans first. And you know what, Honourable Speaker? It's not only Manitobans, it's their own caucus members who are done with that side of the House. Just yesterday, the member for Spruce Wood said, I've had enough of the Leader of the Opposition who fails to do what our government does, which is put Manitobans first, focus on bringing people together and committing to strengthening our economy by working together as Manitobans and Canadians. On that side of the House, I'd encourage the Leader of the Opposition to fix his own house and get it in order before he talks about our government.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a final supplementary question.
It's unfortunate today, Honourable Speaker, that the Premier doesn't have the courage to stand up and just allows this health minister to get up and spout off whatever they think they know about anything in regards to mining development. It was a monumental task to rebuild the trust of the natural resources sector. We went from the bottom of the heap under their Greg Selinger era right near to the top. And now where are we, Honourable Speaker? We're second last in the whole country, Honourable Speaker. The PC government had record investments, bringing jobs to the areas of the province that needed it most. Now the NDP are doing all they can to dismantle that progress. But the MLA for that area in Thompson, we know that Valet is threatening to move. The NDP MLA for that area knows that the NDP rhetoric is harming his constituents, but he's in fear of retribution from his own Premier. Why is the Premier trading shovels and survey gear for red tape and bureaucracy, Honourable Speaker?
The Honourable Minister of Health, Seniors and Long-Term Care.
Honourable Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition has members of his caucus literally fleeing under his watch, running away from their caucus because they recognize the great work being done by our government by working together. $3.7 billion to build in our province. And today, our Minister of Business, Mining, Trades and Job Creation is making an incredible announcement in the north. We're opening a gold mine in northern Manitoba. Wow. This gold mine, Honourable Honourable Speaker, is creating hundreds of good-paying jobs right here in Manitoba for Manitobans. So while that member focuses on division and rhetoric that only hurts
time
him,
has expired.
we're building.
The honourable member for Portage La Prairie. Order. Honourable member for Portage La Prairie.
Honourable Speaker, producers are at a crossroads right now. American and Chinese tariffs are consuming decision-making. We are meeting and listening to scared farmers each and every day. This isn't a partisan issue. It's a direct threat on major Manitoba industries. In the last few days, Manitoba's farmers have learned that their contracts have been slashed or voided entirely. What has this minister done in that time frame to address this? What organizations has he met with? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thank you for the question. I've been waiting a long time to answer the question that's been presented, but it's amazing how members opposite is trying to get media attention, but has not presented a single idea to help canola producers in Manitoba. No idea whatsoever. When I met with the Federal Agriculture Minister, we discussed options to address concerns, and we did not see members from Portage there. And we met with the canola growers. We met with the Canola Growers Association agriculture officials in Minnesota. I did not see the member from Portage at all, which he was at the event, but he chooses to chatter in this House. But we were there in Minnesota working with, in Iowa, with agriculture producers in that state as well for the
Member's
benefit
time has expired. The honourable member for Portage La Prairie.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. I didn't hear any answers there. Time is of the essence. We know this will have massive implications, not just for farmers, but all through the supply chain. Unfortunately, the federal minister is in caretaker mode until the end of April, and farmers need action now. What is this minister willing to do today to help farmers put a crop in the field for this year?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And let me say, the member opposite says government is not listening and consulting. He may want to take a new pair of glasses, because when we were in consulting in Iowa, he was there, but was he around? Not to be seen. In fact, we're working with provincial counterparts, industry, and federal government in a United Canada approach, and we navigate the situation. And it's actually the members opposite should also complain to the runner-up of the PC leadership, who thanked Mr. Trump for the tariffs. So let's start with that within your own backyard, so to speak, Mr.
The honourable member for Portage La Prairie on a final supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, our growers are just looking for answers, and I'm not the Speaker. Honourable Speaker, Chinese canola tariffs are decimating the market already. Donald Trump's on and off again tariffs have shattered the faith in the market, and now farmers are paying the price for this minister's inaction. This would have a devastating effect. How has this minister allowed all of this time to pass with no plan, without something firmly communicated to Manitobans? How can this minister start to meet now, many days too late and way too many dollars short?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And obviously, the member opposite has a different radio station that I would normally listen to, not his. Let us be frank. We have increased, in partnership with the federal government, the Ag Stability Program from 80 to 90%, and doubled the Ag Stability Program cap to $3 to $6 million. But what I'm going to say is, the member opposite, unfortunately, can use the excuse he wasn't part of the government. But when you put 300% tariff on Crown land producers and they feel that they know what they're doing, I'm talking about agriculture in the province of Manitoba, and they were the rulers of the unfortunate tariff of 300% to the young generational cattle producers in the province of Manitoba. And I have to say,
Member's time has expired. The honourable member for Midland.
Honourable Speaker, we've heard a lot about the realities for farmers in this chamber from this side of the House, but what we have not heard is a single word of assurance from this minister that his government is going to do anything to support an industry that has been the bedrock of our economy and our province. We are not talking in hypotheticals anymore. My constituents are already seeing the impact. Potato contracts are being cancelled as we speak, and the industry will be devastated with a lasting impact. The minister has been silent. What is his plan to support potato producers in Manitoba today?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thank you to the members opposite for asking a question. As a matter of fact, this Friday afternoon we're meeting with the Keystone agriculture producers regarding the potato production. It is not the fault of this government that members opposite choose to support the tariffs by their upcoming leader that want to be leader in the province of Manitoba. And I want to assure you that we, as Manitoba agriculture, we will work with the Keystone producers as best as we can. And I can honestly say that some of the Keystone potato producers are somewhat upset because of promises that government made before the election, promising more acres, but unfortunately they didn't do the full scope of promises that they should have done.
Member's time has expired. The honourable member for Midland on a supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, I've been talking to the potato producers in my constituency, and they are deeply concerned. The potato industry is planning to cut their volume from processing here in Manitoba. This is going to have a devastating blow to the entire potato industry here. Potato producers in Carman are asking for answers from this minister, not tomorrow, but today. This is happening right now. This is the threat to the very survival of the potato seed industry in Manitoba. What is the minister doing today to help and support these farmers who have had the rug pulled out from under them?
The Honourable Minister for Agriculture.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I want to assure the potato producers in the province of Manitoba, our government, the Department of Agriculture support the opportunities. It's truly unfortunate that the U.S. has chosen to create tariffs of an important industry in the province of Manitoba and Canada. I want to assure members opposite that we will continue to work with potato producers, and in fact, to the point of enhancement and support towards the increased ag stability compensation rate that's going to go from 80% to 90%. Doubling the Ag Stability Program from $3 million to $6 million. And we want to continue to work with producers, and we will talk to producers.
Member's time has expired. The honourable member for Midland on a final supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, for days I've been hearing from my potato producers in my constituency that their concerns are not being addressed by this Minister of Agriculture. Producers and farmers need firm answers and serious commitments. This is a serious issue, and we need to address it as such. These Manitobans do not know what the coming months have in store for them. For years, these farmers have done their part. They've paid more than their fair share into our province and have asked for very little in return. And now that threats outside of their control are going to challenge the very landscape of their industry, and we have a government that is dragging their feet. Since the minister is not prepared to stand up and make any real firm
Member's time has expired. The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thank you for the question from members opposite. We continue to communicate with all agriculture industry, such as the Manitoba pork industry, Cam Dole, had indicated it is crucial that 22,000 Manitobans who rely on sector know that provincial government recognizes what they do for our provincial economy. What we saw today's budget is a positive indication. CAP organization, with tariffs of the two largest trading partners, U.S. and China, on top of facing Manitoba's, we encourage to see a commitment of budget 2025 to $100 million future appropriation funding to mitigate financial losses for farming operations. Contingency fund. So we are.
Time has expired. The honourable member for Roblin.
Prairie Mountain Health is suspending all midwifery, birth, and on-call services for 6 months due to critical staffing shortages. I will table the notice that went to clients last week. This comes just months after Brandon Regional Health Centre nearly had to shut down maternity services for days due to staff mismanagement by this NDP government. Expectant mothers in rural Manitoba are facing growing uncertainty about whether they'll have access to the care they need. Why is this minister failing to prioritize maternity services in Western Manitoba?
The Honourable Minister of Health, Seniors and Long-Term Care.
Honourable Speaker, our government recognizes the importance of investing and strengthening the care that women and those who need it receive across the province. We've been working directly with Prairie Mountain Health to ensure that there are adequate supports in place, whether it's midwives, nurses. In our 25-26 budget presented by our wonderful Minister of Finance, our government is investing over $1 million additional dollars to strengthen midwifery care in the province. Unlike the previous failed PC government that fired midwives, stopped their ability to get training in Manitoba, and currently that opposition doesn't even believe in supporting reproductive health care. We'll keep investing and strengthening it, Honourable Speaker, and take no lessons from that member.
Right on.
The honourable member for Roblin on a supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, the minister's words are no comfort to women throughout PMH who were expecting to deliver with a midwife and now no longer have that option. We are just 3 months into 2025 and Prairie Mountain Health is already facing its second major maternity care crisis. This pattern exposes a clear failure from this NDP government to address staffing shortages before they begin.
The honourable member for Turtle Mountain will come to order. The honourable member for Roblin.
In their memo, Prairie Mountain Health says this is a, quote, very difficult decision. Why are expectant mothers bearing the brunt of the NDP's bad decision-making?
Exactly.
Honourable Minister of Health, Seniors and Long-Term Care.
Honourable Speaker, I want to be very clear. Instead of listening to that member's fear-mongering, I want Manitobans to listen to the leadership in their healthcare system that is working directly with us to make sure that services for pregnant women, pregnant people are there when they need them. But I want to be very clear. It was that member opposite and members on that side of the House that refused to train midwives in Manitoba for years.
Order, please. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition will come to order, and the government bench will also come to order. The Honourable Minister of Health, Seniors and Long-Term Care.
Honourable Speaker, I'm not surprised that the Leader of the Opposition is heckling me when I'm talking about reproductive health care. He was part of a team that cut those services for women across this province for 2 terms of government. And on that side of the House, they continue to make statements trying to shame and blame, and if they could, cut services for women right now. Yep. On that side of the House, they do not stand for women. On this side of the House, we stand for women every single day and invest in their health care getting better.
Right on.
The honourable member for Roblin.
Honourable Speaker, the only one fear-mongering in this chamber right now is the Minister of Health. I'd encourage them to read the memo that I tabled that was sent out by Prairie Mountain Health to midwifery clients last week. If these women had dreamed of giving birth at home, that choice has now been taken away. If, like many in PMH, they live hours away from the nearest maternity ward, they now have to hope they can time their labour to be close to a hospital. Expectant mothers deserve better than this. They deserve a government that ensures they have access to the care they need during one of the most vulnerable and important times in their lives. Will the minister commit today to immediately restoring full midwifery services in Prairie Mountain Health?
Good question.
The Honourable Minister of Health, Seniors and Long-Term Care.
For 7.5 years, the previous failed PC government cut midwifery services across Manitoba. They refused to train midwives in Manitoba. They cut and closed healthcare services for women in Manitoba. And currently, that very member door knocks with members opposite who tell Manitobans that they don't deserve to have investments in women's health care. What they're doing on that side of the House is what they did for 7.5 years previously, treat women with zero respect. That's right. $1.1 million in our budget for midwifery services, $10 million for the Women's Health Clinic, millions of dollars for the front lines of healthcare services to strengthen women's health care, more and more, because we stand with women each and every day, and we invest that shows that. On that side of the House...
Member's time has expired. The honourable member for Agassiz.
Today, workers at 2 CFS agencies have gone on strike after over 60 workers received layoff notices, which is resulting in a significant gap in services for children, youth, and their families. Local organizations are stepping in to help, but they lack the resources and tools to adequately meet the demand. What is this province doing to support these private organizations that are being forced to take on this additional work?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
Honourable Speaker, I want to assure the member opposite that essential service agreements are in place to ensure that children and youth get the services that they need and rightly deserve. You know, it's unfortunate that members opposite in their failed PC government left Michif and Métis workers without a contract from 2022. We're taking a different approach on this side of the government. That's why I'm proud, since I've been appointed minister, to put a 6% raise increase into annualized payments, which is about $33 million to the overall CFS system, something members opposite never did in 7.5 years.
The honourable member for Agassiz on a supplementary question.
And those CFS agencies currently are on strike. The recent budget did not allocate additional support for the many organizations that are now being forced to provide services in the absence of critical programs due to the cuts made by this minister. I've heard directly from my community members about the negative impact these cuts have had, as they are struggling to respond to families without the proper supports that these children need. What steps has the minister taken to provide necessary supports to these organizations?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
I want to remind the member opposite that, again, I've put in an additional $33 million in annualized increase to the overall CFS budget. I'll remind members opposite that in their time as a failed, cold, callous government, they didn't have any increases into the CFS system. Not only that, they actually stood in this House and introduced and passed legislation that actually legislated the rights of Indigenous children away. That's their record. Our record is supporting agencies, supporting workers, and more importantly, supporting Manitoba families to ensure that they get the supports and resources that they need and they rightly deserve.
The honourable member for Agassiz on a final supplementary question.
Children, youth, and their families are facing a critical shortage of support workers due to the recent program cuts. Yet the minister has not provided clarity on the immediate supports being put in place to address this gap. Non-profit organizations simply do not have the capacity to absorb these losses. Given the urgent need, what concrete steps is the province taking right now to ensure these families and kids receive the one-on-one support that they have come to depend on?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
I will remind the member again that we've stepped up in a real, tangible way with real money and dollars for the system. That includes an $11.3 million increase to CFS wages to ensure that they've got the resources that they need for their frontline workers. You know, I would really encourage the member opposite. I know that she's upset with herself and her previous failed government because they didn't stand up for Manitoba children, the most vulnerable in Manitoba. I would encourage the member to stop pretending like she actually cares about children and get up and apologize.
That's right.
The honourable member for Borderland.
The intersection of Highway 201 and 306 has been the site of several serious accidents over the years, including 2 in November, one of which resulted in the tragic death of a young mother and daughter. On November 27th, I wrote to the Minister of Infrastructure to request that immediate measures be taken to improve visibility of the intersection, including the installation of flashing red lights on top of larger stop signs. I followed up again on February 10th and March 20th, and still nothing has been done at the intersection. It's been 4 months since I first raised this issue. Why has this minister not taken these simple, immediate steps to improve safety at the intersection?
The Honourable Minister, Transportation and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And as I've said before, safety is my #1 priority as Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure. That is why, since we have come into government, we have introduced our Road Safety Unit, which is a new part of our transportation division that is on site at the time of any fatality to make assessments, to make recommendations for how we can keep our highways safer. We're almost completed a review of the entire highway network so that we understand the safety priorities across the province from a data-driven lens. Having said that, it is always a tragedy when somebody's life is lost on our highway, and I feel it deeply, and I appreciate the members' feelings about that too.
The Honourable Member for Borderland on a supplementary question.
I understand the department is undertaking a review, but what is stopping this minister from directing the immediate installation of flashing red lights on top of larger stop signs to improve visibility of the intersection? 2 accidents a week apart at the same site, and 4 months later, nothing's been done. Will this minister act today in the interests of the safety of my constituents and all motorists who travel through the 201-306 intersection and take immediate steps today to improve the visibility and safety of the intersection?
The Honourable Minister, Transportation and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I thank the member opposite for the question. I can appreciate that all Manitobans have feelings about specific places on the transportation network that they feel deserve immediate attention. We are taking steps every day to improve the safety of our highway network. The last time I checked, that member did not have an engineering degree or any ability to assess where the priorities would be and where those changes should happen. So we will continue with the process within the department to make the correct safety decisions on our highway network.
Great answer.
The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. This morning, after failing to reach an equitable agreement, more than 300 workers at Métis and Midwife Child and Family Services have gone on strike. According to the MGEU President, Kyle Ross, these workers are simply looking for the same salary their civil service counterparts make for doing the exact same work. Does this government believe it is fair that unionized workers at the Métis Authority earn less than those who do the same work in civil service?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
Miigwech to the member opposite for that important question. And as I've stated in the House, we are a government that supports workers and, more importantly, support those that are on the front lines that are working with Manitoba's most vulnerable children and families. And that's why we put an $11.3 million increase into CFS agencies' wages, which also includes $2.4 million for the Métis and Midwife agencies that we're presently talking about today. We know that contracts, the agreements are best done at the table. It is my hope that folks will get back to the table and
Member's time has expired. The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park on a supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, according to the MMF Minister for Métis CFS, the funds provided by government does not include the $1,800 retention bonuses or the additional salary step increase for each classification. In addition, this funding does not account for the shelter staff, which is a critical service ensuring children in care are safe and not living in hotel rooms. How are these children getting the supports they need to succeed or even to feel safe when in 1 month the MMF had to lay off over 60 critical workers and now more than 300 are on strike just to receive a fair wage?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
Miigwech to the member opposite. I would also encourage the member to, recognize that members opposite in the PC failed government left these workers since 2022 without a contract. They didn't feel it was in their interest as government to actually ensure that they were providing those dollars to support those workers. We've had to clean up their mess, and that's what we've done in our department. We've allocated an additional $2.4 million for Michif and Métis agencies' wages. We hope that folks will come to the table in a good way and get back to negotiations to ensure that those services are there, continue to be there for the Michif and Métis children that they service.
His time has expired. The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park on a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. According to APTN News article, the Southeast CFS agency was scheduled to strike along the two Métis agencies. However, it was averted after an offer that met wage parity was received. 3 weeks ago, when the MMF was forced to lay off over 60 critical frontline workers, we were warned that a strike could be coming. Why has this government not been able to come to a fair deal with the two Métis agencies despite having 3 weeks to negotiate one?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
And the member knows that government isn't at the table of negotiations. That's between the union and also the agencies. I do want to just lift up and say miigwech to everybody that worked very, very hard to come to an agreement out southeast to ensure that they're going to be voting on that. And I quote here, Southeast CFS negotiations continued over the weekend and into today, and as a result, we have an offer that achieves what our members have been asking for, end quote, and that's by MGEU President Kyle Ross. I will table that. I think that they operated in a really good way, coming to the table to ensure that they were working on an agreement that everybody could agree with and doing what is in the best interest of the children that they service.
The Honourable Member for Kirkfield Park.
Honourable Speaker, the safety of Manitoba families is a priority for our government. And after 7.5 years of a PC government who froze funding to law enforcement, facilitated the net loss of over 50 Winnipeg police officers, cut bail programs, and I was working at the jail across the street when they cut the electronic monitoring program. Will the Minister of Justice tell the House about Manitoba's actions and leadership on advocating the federal government to take action on bail reform?
Great question.
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Honourable Speaker, thank you to the member for that question. Kelly Verwey was a young, vibrant community leader who was tragically killed by a man out on bail. I quote, "The circumstances that underpin this event cannot be allowed to happen again." That's a quote from a letter that I'll table now, signed by all 13 premiers and to the Prime Minister. That's NDP, Liberal, and Conservative premiers all calling for stronger bail reform. But of course, the previous government, they cut bail programs, they cut bail monitoring, and they froze funding to police. We took a different approach, one that the National Police Federation has endorsed, telling other jurisdictions to follow Manitoba's lead on public safety. We look forward to working with the federal government to enhance safety.
Time has expired. The Honourable Member for Portage la Prairie.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. On Friday, I was able to meet with community leaders and emergency services to discuss the ongoing crisis at Oak Tree Towers in Portage la Prairie. The minister has stood in this House yesterday and accused me of misleading citizens of Portage la Prairie on the number of times the RCMP were there. I just want to provide today that I spoke with Staff Sergeant Zane Zamiak of the Portage la Prairie RCMP, and my numbers were low. It's 48 times they've been there. When can the residents expect 24-hour security to be on site for their safety?
The Honourable Minister of Housing, Addiction and Homelessness.
Miigwech, Honourable Speaker. And again, I want to assure that member that we've continued to meet with Oak Tree Tower members and will continue to consult with them. That member can come across the way, have a collaborative approach. Instead, that member has chosen to have a divisive way of handling casework, like all members across the way always do. We could work together like the mayor in Portage la Prairie has done with myself. She's picked up the phone, we've been talking about this, and we're going to work collectively to work with the residents. I invite that member to come aboard and work collaboratively with the mayor and I.
The Honourable Member for Portage la Prairie on a supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, here's the issue. No one knows what this minister is speaking about, including herself. 17 letters to the Premier and to the Minister. If that is not somebody speaking out, I'm not sure what is. She talked about an almost completed security fence, key cards, and cameras. Well, here's the reality, and I table the photos of Oak Tree Towers from last night. No security fence, and there isn't even a glass door in the door. When will the fence be started, or at very least, can the door be replaced? Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Housing, Addiction and Homelessness.
That member should be ashamed of themselves. And all members on that side. Oak Tree Towers were asking that government for years to come into their apartment to put those security access measures in their building. Did they listen to them? Absolutely not. So that member can look to their right, they can look to their left, they can ask that failed PC government why they didn't act. Our government is acting. We're putting in a security fence. We have security going through there 7 times a day. We are putting key card access on every single floor. We are putting security cameras in that building. And we are working with the mayor.
Order.
I invite that member to come across and work collaboratively with us. Get on board and quit being divisive.
The Honourable Member for Portage la Prairie on a final supplementary question.
The NDP are about as transparent as the plywood door these residents have to hide behind. And this side of the table, we will work for those people of Oak Tree Towers every day. This minister refuses to meet with the residents and the emergency services. If she'd have come, she would have learned that there are credible fears and the need of a 24-hour security, not predictable patrols a couple times a night so the criminals can come after they've left. Residents have demanded it. Why is this minister refusing to listen to the residents of Oak Tree Towers?
The Honourable Minister of Housing, Addiction and Homelessness.
Again, I'll ask that member, did that member come across the way and try to work collaboratively with myself? Did that member pick up the phone and call the mayor to say, hey, how can we work together? Not once did that member ever try to work collaboratively to work in the best interest of those residents at Oak Tree Towers. Shame on them. Those members at Oak Tree Towers were knocking on that failed PC government's doors for years, and they did nothing. Our government is acting. We're putting measures in place. We are working collaboratively with those residents and will continue to do in the best interest of those residents. Unlike that member who called a press conference and wanted to get his name recognition. Shame
Member's
on
time
him.
has expired. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Honourable Speaker, the other day, some things were just were not clear from the Premier's story about his ethics violations and the facts that months and months and months have gone by, and the Premier finally took the time to speak to the Commissioner after the CBC broke the story. So I ask this Deputy Premier, since the Premier has no courage to stand in his place and answer this question, When did they know that the Premier broke the law and that their staff was covering it up, Honourable Speaker?
The Honourable Minister of Health, Seniors and Long-Term Care.
Honourable Speaker, on that side of the House, the Leader of the Opposition knows nothing of courage. Nothing. We have a Premier in this province that is focused on bringing people together. We have a Premier that is focused on uniting Canadians. We have a Premier that has brought forward a budget that is historic and builds our province, creating hundreds and thousands of jobs to make life better for all Manitobans. We have the most popular Premier in Canada because he puts people first.
That's right.
So proud to be part of a government led by a Premier that is focused on the opposite of that leader, who only wants to divide and perpetuate hateful rhetoric. On this side of the House, we'll continue to stand with our leader.
Time has expired. The time for oral questions has expired. Petitions. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you very much and good afternoon, Honourable Speaker. I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly, and this is the background to this petition. Number one, on May 1st, 2022, Jordan Reimer, 24 years of age, was killed by an impaired driver while she was acting as a designated driver. Number two, there are two people legally culpable for her death, the impaired driver and the accomplice. The driver was charged. Wish the Health Minister would allow me to finish my petition, Honourable Speaker.
Please carry on reading your petition. Order, please. The Honourable Minister of Families will come to order, and the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition will read his petition and not try and tell the Speaker how to run things. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and my apologies to you if you took it that way. It definitely was not intended. So, Honourable Speaker, the background to this petition is as follows. Number one, on May 1st, 2022, Jordan Reimer, 24 years of age, was killed by an impaired driver while she was acting as a designated driver. Number two, there are two people legally culpable for her death, the impaired driver and the accomplice. The driver was charged, but the second criminal, the accomplice, has not been held accountable. Number three, a concerned citizen took the keys from the impaired driver earlier in the evening to ensure he could not drive impaired. The accomplice retrieved the keys from this citizen under false pretenses and knowingly provided the impaired driver with access to the vehicle. Number four, the Winnipeg Police Services, WPS, investigation provided adequate evidence to meet the charging standard and recommended charges be laid against the accomplice. The Crown prosecutors declined to prosecute the accomplice. Number five, the family of Jordan Reimer has called for the prosecution of the accomplice and that the decision to not prosecute be reviewed independently. Number six, as recently as 2022, there is a precedent to refer criminal files of decisions to not proceed with prosecution to extra-provincial governments of justice for review. This was done with the Peter Nygaard file, which ultimately led to a reversal in the decision to not prosecute, and charges were laid. Number seven, an out-of-province review is supported by MAD Canada, MAD Manitoba, and by Manitobans. Number eight, the family has exhausted every avenue within the existing system, and in the absence of a prescribed process, when a disagreement exists on charging standards, the only option is to request an independent, out-of-province review. Number nine, In December 2024, the WPS reported an alarming number of impaired drivers in the holiday check stop program. Extending criminal culpability beyond the driver to those who engage in overt actions to facilitate impaired driving will save lives. Number 10, Manitobans deserve to have confidence in the provincial government and justice systems to make decisions that achieve true justice for victims and their families. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to order an out-of-province review of the prosecutor's decision to not prosecute the accomplice in the death of Jordan Reimer. This petition is signed by Sonny Giesbrecht, Kristen Phillips, Taylor Friesen, and many, many more fine Manitobans. Honourable Speaker.
The honourable member for Brandon West.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba. The background to this petition is as follows. Number 1, on May 1st, 2022, Jordan Reimer, 24 years of age, was killed by an impaired driver while she was acting as a designated driver. Number 2, there are 2 people legally culpable for her death: the impaired driver and the accomplice. The driver was charged, but the second criminal, the accomplice, has not been held accountable. Number 3, a concerned citizen took the keys from the impaired driver earlier in the evening to ensure he could not drive impaired. The accomplice retrieved the keys from the citizen under false pretenses and knowingly provided the impaired driver with access to the vehicle. Number 4, the Winnipeg Police Service, WPS, investigation provided adequate evidence to meet the charging standards and recommended charges be laid against the accomplice. The Crown prosecutors declined to prosecute the accomplice. Number 5, the family of Jordan Reimer has called for the prosecution of the accomplice, and that the decision to not prosecute be reviewed independently. Number 6, as recently as 2022, there is precedent to refer criminal files for decision to not proceed with prosecution to extra provincial departments of justice for review. This was done in the Peter Nygaard file, which ultimately led to a reversal in the decision to not prosecute, and charges were laid. Number 7, an out-of-province review is supported by MAD Canada, MAD Manitoba, and by Manitobans. Number 8, the family has exhausted every avenue within the existing system, and in the absence of a prescribed process, when a disagreement exists on charging standards, the only option is to request an independent out-of-province review. Number 9, in December 2024, the WPS reported an alarming number of impaired drivers in the holiday check stop program, extending criminal culpability beyond the driver to those who engage in overt actions to facilitate impaired driving will save lives. Number 10, Manitobans deserve to have confidence in the provincial government and justice systems to make decisions that achieve true justice for victims and their families. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to order an out-of-province review of the prosecutor's decision to not prosecute the accomplice in the death of Jordan Reimer. This petition was signed by Karen Reimer, Donna Harvey, Brenda Lee Cran, and many, many other fine Manitobans. Honourable Assistant Deputy Speaker.
Member for Roblin.
Thank you. I wish to present the following petition. To the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, the background to this petition is as follows. On May 1st, 2022, Jordan Reimer, 24 years of age, was killed by an impaired driver while she was acting as a designated driver. There are two people legally culpable for her death, the impaired driver and the accomplice. The driver was charged, but the second criminal, the accomplice, has not been held accountable. A concerned citizen took the keys from the impaired driver earlier in the evening to ensure he could not drive impaired. The accomplice retrieved the keys from this citizen under false pretenses and knowingly provided the impaired driver with access to the vehicle. The Winnipeg Police Services investigation provided adequate evidence to meet the charging standard and recommended charges be laid against the accomplice. The Crown prosecutors declined to prosecute the accomplice. The family of Jordan Reimer has called for the prosecution of the accomplice and that the decision to not prosecute be reviewed independently. As recently as 2022, there is precedent to refer criminal files of decisions to not proceed with prosecution to extra-provincial departments of justice for review. This was done with the Peter Nygaard file, which ultimately led to a reversal in the decision to not prosecute, and charges were laid. An out-of-province review is supported by MAD Canada, MAD Manitoba, and by Manitobans. The family has exhausted every avenue within the existing system, and in the absence of a prescribed process, when a disagreement exists on charging standards, the only option is to request an independent, out-of-province review. In December 2024, the WPS reported an alarming number of impaired drivers in the Holiday Check Stop program. Extending criminal culpability beyond the driver to those who engage in overt actions to facilitate impaired driving will save lives. Manitobans deserve to have confidence in the provincial government and justice systems to make decisions that achieve true justice for victims and their families. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to order an out-of-province review of the prosecutor's decision to not prosecute the accomplice in the death of Jordan Reimer. And this petition is signed by David Robson, Tierney Matechak, Eric Nadiak, and many, many other Manitobans.
Member for Agassiz.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba. The background to this petition is as follows. Number one, on May 1st, 2022, Jordan Reimer, 24 years of age, was killed by an impaired driver while she was acting as a designated driver. Number two, there are two people legally culpable for her death: the impaired driver and the accomplice. The driver was charged, but the second criminal, the accomplice, has not been held accountable. Number three, a concerned citizen took the keys from the impaired driver earlier in the evening to ensure he could not drive impaired. The accomplice retrieved the keys from the citizen under the false pretenses and knowingly provided the impaired driver with access to the vehicle. Number four, the Winnipeg Police Services investigation provided adequate evidence to meet the charging standard and recommended charges be laid against the accomplice. The Crown prosecutors declined to prosecute the accomplice. Number five, The family of Jordan Reimer has called for the prosecution of the accomplice and that the decision to not prosecute be reviewed independently. Number 6, as recently as 2022, there is precedent to refer criminal files of decisions to not proceed with prosecution to extra provincial departments of justice for review. This was done with the Peter Nygaard file, which ultimately led to a reversal in the decision to not prosecute, and charges were laid. Number 7, an out-of-province review is supported by MAD Canada, MAD Manitoba, and by Manitobans. Number 8, the family has exhausted every avenue within the existing system, and in the absence of a prescribed process when a disagreement exists on charging standards, the only option is to request an independent out-of-province review. Number 9, in December of 2024, the WPS reported an alarming number of impaired drivers in the Holiday Check Stop program. Extending criminal culpability beyond the driver to those who engage in overt actions to facilitate impaired driving will save lives. Number 10, Manitobans deserve to have confidence in the provincial government and justice systems to make decisions that achieve true justice for victims and their families. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to order out-of-province review of the prosecutor's decision to not prosecute the accomplice in the death of Jordan Reimer. This petition has been signed by Pat Hope, Murray Hope, Laura Germain, and many, many more Manitobans. Thank you.
Member for Steinbeck.
Thank you. I wish to present the following petition. The background to this petition is as follows. 1, on May 1st, 2022, Jordan Reimer, 24 years of age, was killed by an impaired driver while she was acting as a designated driver. 2, there are 2 people legally culpable for her death, the impaired driver and the accomplice. Driver was charged, but the second criminal, the accomplice, was not held accountable. 3, a concerned citizen took the keys from the impaired driver earlier in the evening to ensure he could not drive impaired. The accomplice retrieved the keys from this citizen under false pretenses and knowingly provided the impaired driver with access to the vehicle. 4, the Winnipeg Police Service, WPS, investigation provided adequate evidence to meet the charging standard and recommended charges be laid against the accomplice. The Crown prosecutors declined to prosecute the accomplice. 5, family of Jordan Reimer has called for the prosecution of the accomplice and that the decision to not prosecute be reviewed independently. 6, as recently as 2022, there is precedent to refer criminal files of decisions to not proceed with prosecution to extra-provincial departments of justice for review. This was done with the Peter Nygaard file, which ultimately led to a reversal in the decision to not prosecute, and charges were laid. 7, an out-of-province review is supported by MAD Canada, MAD Manitoba, and by Manitobans. 8, the family has exhausted every avenue within the existing system, and in the absence of a prescribed process when a disagreement exists on charging standards, the only option is to request an independent out-of-province review. 9, in December 2024, the WPS reported an alarming number of impaired drivers in the Holiday Check Stop program. Extending criminal culpability beyond the driver to those who engage in overt actions to facilitate impaired driving will save lives. 10, Manitobans deserve to have confidence in the provincial government and justice systems to make decisions that achieve true justice for victims and their families. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to order an out-of-province review of the prosecutor's decision to not prosecute the accomplice in the death of Jordan Reimer. This is signed by Ava Cudley, Jenna Gertson, Thomas Winslow, and many other Manitobans. Thank you.
Member for Borderland.
Honourable Speaker, I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba. The background to this petition is as follows. 1. On May 1st, 2022, Jordan Reimer, 24 years of age, was killed by an impaired driver while she was acting as a designated driver. 2. There are 2 people legally culpable for her death, the impaired driver and the accomplice. The driver was charged, but the second criminal, the accomplice, has not been held accountable. 3. A concerned citizen took the keys from the impaired driver earlier in the evening to ensure he could not drive impaired. The accomplice retrieved the keys from this citizen under false pretenses and knowingly provided the impaired driver with access to the vehicle. 4. The Winnipeg Police Service's investigation provided adequate evidence to meet the charging standard and recommended charges be laid against the accomplice. The Crown prosecutors declined to prosecute the accomplice. 5. The family of Jordan Reimer has called for the prosecution of the accomplice and that the decision to not prosecute be reviewed independently. 6. As recently as 2022, there is precedent to refer criminal files of decisions to not proceed with prosecution to extra-provincial departments of justice for review. This was done with the Peter Nygaard file, which ultimately led to a reversal in the decision to not prosecute, and charges were laid. 7. An out-of-province review is supported by MAD Canada, MAD Manitoba, and by Manitobans. 8. The family has exhausted every avenue within the existing system, and in the absence of a prescribed process when a disagreement exists on charging standards, the only option is to request an independent out-of-province review. 9. In December 2024, the WPS reported an alarming number of impaired drivers in the holiday check stop program. Extending criminal culpability beyond the driver to those who engage in overt actions to facilitate impaired driving will save lives. 10. Manitobans deserve to have confidence in the provincial government and justice systems to make decisions that achieve true justice for victims and their families. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to order an out-of-province review of the prosecutor's decision to not prosecute the accomplice in the death of Jordan Reimer. This petition has been signed by Carol Penner, Zoe Zaretsky, Kennedy Blair, and many, many Manitobans.
Member for Morden Winkler.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I wish to present the following petition. To the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba. The background to this petition is as follows. 1. On May 1st, 2022, Jordan Reimer, 24 years of age, was killed by an impaired driver while she was acting as a designated driver. Or 2. There are 2 people legally culpable for her death, the impaired driver and the accomplice. The driver was charged, but the second criminal, the accomplice, has not been held accountable. 3. A concerned citizen took the keys from the impaired driver earlier in the evening to ensure that he could not drive impaired. The accomplice retrieved the keys from the citizen under false pretenses and knowingly provided the impaired driver with access to the vehicle. Number 4. The Winnipeg Police Service's investigation provided adequate evidence to meet the charging standards and recommended charges be laid against the accomplice. The Crown prosecutors denied to prosecute the accomplice. Number 5. The family of Jordan Reimer has called for the prosecution of the accomplice and that the decision not be prosecuted be reviewed independently. Number 6. As recently as 2022, there is precedent to refer criminal files of decisions not proceed the prosecution to extra provincial departments of justice for review. This was done with the Peter Nygaard file, which ultimately led to a reversal of the decision to not prosecute, and charges were laid. Number 7. An out-of-province review is supported by MAD Canada, MAD Manitoba, and by Manitobans. Number 8. The family has exhausted every avenue within the existing system, and in the absence of prescribed process when a disagreement exists on charging standards, the only option is to request an independent out-of-province review. Number 9. In December 2024, the Winnipeg Police Service reported an alarming number of impaired drivers in the holiday check stop program, extending criminal culpability beyond the drivers to those who engage in overt actions to facilitate impaired driving will save lives. Number 10. Manitobans deserve to have confidence in the provincial government and justice systems to make decisions that achieve true justice for victims and their families. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to order an out-of-province review of the prosecutor's decision to not prosecute the accomplice in the death of Jordan Reimer. This petition has been signed by Tamar Darcy, Ian Fleury, and Tara Fleury, and many other Manitobans.
Member for Interlake Gimli.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I wish to present the following petition. The Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, the background of this petition is as follows. 1. On May 1st, 2022, Jordan Reimer, 24 years of age, was killed by an impaired driver while she was acting as a designated driver. 2. There are 2 people legally culpable for her death, the impaired driver and the accomplice. The driver was charged, but the second criminal, the accomplice, has not been held accountable. Excuse me. A concerned citizen took the keys from the impaired driver earlier in the evening to ensure that he could not drive impaired. The accomplice retrieved the keys from the citizen under false pretenses and knowingly provided the impaired driver with access to the vehicle. 4. The Winnipeg Police Services, WPS, investigation provided adequate evidence to meet the charging standard and recommended charges be laid against the accomplice. The Crown's prosecutors declined to prosecute the accomplice. 5. The family of Jordan Reimer was called for the prosecution of the accomplice, and that the decision was to not prosecute to be reviewed independently. 6. As recently as 2022, there is precedent for to refer criminal files of decisions to not proceed with prosecutions to an extra provincial Department of Justice for review. This was done with the Peter Nygaard file, which ultimately led to a reversal in the decision to not prosecute, and charges were laid. And out of 7, an out-of-province review was supported by MAD Canada, MAD Manitoba, and by Manitobans. 8, the family has exhausted every avenue within the existing system, and in the absence of a prescribed process when a disagreement exists on charging standards, the only option is to request an independent out-of-province review. 9, in December of 2024, the Winnipeg Police Services reported an alarming number of impaired drivers in the holiday check stop program. Extending criminal culpability beyond the driver to those who engage in overt actions to facilitate impaired driving will save lives. 10, Manitobans deserve to have confidence in the provincial government and justice system to make decisions that achieve true justice for victims and their families. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to order an out-of-province review of the prosecutor's decision to not prosecute the accomplice in the death of Jordan Reimer. This petition has been signed by Rob Lyons, Bonnie Bruce, Alicia Lorenzel, and many, many other fine Manitobans.
Member for Lakeside.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba. Number 1, the background to this petition is as follows. On May 1st, 2022, Jordan Reimer, 24 years of age, was killed by an impaired driver while she was acting as a designated driver. Number 2, there are 2 people legally culpable for her death: the impaired driver and the accomplice. The driver was charged, but the second criminal, the accomplice, has not been held accountable. Number 3, a concerned citizen took the keys from the impaired driver earlier in the evening to ensure he could not drive impaired. The accomplice retrieved the keys from this citizen under false pretenses and knowingly provided the impaired driver with access to the vehicle. Number 4, the Winnipeg Police Service, or the WPS, investigation provided adequate evidence to meet the charging standard and recommended charges be laid against the accomplice. The Crown prosecutors declined to prosecute the accomplice. Number 5, the family of Jordan Reimer has called for the prosecution of the accomplice and that the decision to not prosecute be reviewed independently. Number 6, as recently as 2022, there is precedent to refer criminal files of decisions to not proceed with prosecution to extra-provincial departments of justice for review. This was done with the Peter Nygaard's file, which ultimately led to reversal in the decision to not prosecute, and charges were laid. Number 7, an out-of-province review is supported by MAD Canada, MAD Manitoba, and by Manitobans. Number 8, the family has exhausted every avenue within the existing system, and in the absence of a prescribed process when a disagreement exists on charging standards, the only option is to request an independent out-of-province review. Number 9, in December 2024, the WPS reported an alarming number of impaired drivers in the holiday check stop program. Extending criminal culpability beyond the driver to those who engage in overt actions to facilitate impaired driving will save lives. 10, Manitobans deserve to have confidence in the provincial government and justice systems to make decisions that achieve true justice for victims and their families. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to order an out-of-province review of the prosecutor's decision to not prosecute the accomplice in the death of Jordan Reimer. This petition is signed by Barry McNish, Cindy Scott, Larry McGuire, and many, many Manitobans.
Member for Dawson Trail. Dawson Trail.
I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba. The background to this petition is as follows. In March 2023, a much-needed new vocational school was planned, budgeted for, and announced to be completed and operational for the 2027 school year. Hundreds of families have participated in outreach done by the Same River School Division, expressing a strong need for vocational training in the community. The current provincial government paused the project upon taking office, and work has not resumed in spite of the Deputy Minister of Education admitting to trustees, you definitely need a new school. Every delay prevents students in the St. Anne and surrounding communities from having skills programming to which they are entitled and they deserve. Same River School Division trustees have identified areas of focus for this school of real local demand, such as healthcare and daycare, which are greatly needed. The current high school is just not suitable for the limits on programming that can be offered, as 400 students currently share a single 3-stall boys' washroom and a single 3-stall girls' washroom. This planned school was to include daycare spaces that the community greatly needs. At present, the lack of available spaces has limited the ability for some parents to return to the workforce, which hurts both families and the local economy. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to immediately begin work on the new St. Anne Vocational School and allocate necessary resources to meet the original 2027 timeline that residents were expecting. This petition has been signed by many Manitobans.
Member for La Vérendrye.
Honourable Speaker, I wish to present the following petition. To the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba. The background to this petition is as follows. 1. On May 1st, 2022, Jordan Reimer, 24 years of age, was killed by an impaired driver while she was acting as a designated driver. 2. There are 2 people legally culpable for her death: the impaired driver and the accomplice. The driver was charged, but the second criminal, the accomplice, has not been held accountable. 3. A concerned citizen took the keys from the impaired driver earlier in the evening to ensure he could not drive impaired. The accomplice retrieved the keys from the citizen under false pretenses and knowingly provided the impaired driver with access to the vehicle. 4. The Winnipeg Police Services, WPS, investigation provided adequate evidence to meet the charging standard and recommended charges be laid against the accomplice. The Crown prosecutors denied to prosecute the accomplice. 5. The family of Jordan Reimer has called for the prosecution of the accomplice and that the decision to not prosecute be reviewed independently. 6. As recently as 2022, there is precedent to refer criminal files of decisions to not proceed with prosecution to extra-provincial departments of justice for review. This was done in the Peter Nygaard file, which ultimately led to a reversal in the decision not to prosecute, and charges were laid. 7. an out-of-province review is supported by MAD Canada, MAD Manitoba, and by Manitobans. 8, the family has exhausted every avenue within the existing system, and in the absence of a prescribed process, when a disagreement exists on charging standards, the only option is to request an independent, out-of-province review. 9, in December 2024, the WPS reported an alarming number of impaired drivers in the holiday check stop program. Extending criminal culpability beyond the driver to those who engage in overt actions to facilitate impaired driving will save lives. 10, Manitobans deserve to have confidence in the provincial government and justice systems to make decisions that achieve true justice for criminals and their families. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to order an out-of-province review of the prosecutor's decision to not prosecute the accomplice in the death of Jordan Reimer. This petition has been signed by Keith Elder, Jack Cohenhofer, Jack Hildebrandt, and many, many other Manitobans.
Member for Riding Mountain.
Thank you, Honorable Acting Deputy Speaker, sorry. I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba. The background to this petition is as follows. 1. On May 1st, 2022, Jordan Reimer, 24 years of age, was killed by an impaired driver while she was acting as a designated driver. 2. There are 2 people legally culpable for her death, the impaired driver and the accomplice. The driver was charged, but the second criminal, the accomplice, has not been held accountable. 3. A concerned citizen took the keys from the impaired driver earlier in the evening to ensure he could not drive impaired. The accomplice retrieved the keys from this citizen under false pretenses and knowingly provided the impaired driver with access to the vehicle. 4. The Winnipeg Police Services, WPS, investigation provided adequate evidence to meet the charging standard and recommended charges be laid against the accomplice. The Crown prosecutors declined to prosecute the accomplice. 5. The family of Jordan Reimer has called for the prosecution of the accomplice and that the decision to not prosecute be reviewed independently. 6. As recently as 2022, there is precedent to refer criminal files of decisions to not proceed with prosecution to extra-provincial departments of justice for review. This was done with the Peter Nygaard file, which ultimately led to a reversal in the decision to not prosecute, and charges were laid. 7. An out-of-province review is supported by MAD Canada, MAD Manitoba, and by Manitobans. 8. The family has exhausted every avenue within the existing system and, in the absence of a prescribed process, when a disagreement exists on charging standards, the only option is to request an independent out-of-province review. 9. In December 2024, the WPS reported an alarming number of impaired drivers in the holiday check stop program. Extending criminal culpability beyond the driver to those who engage in overt actions to facilitate impaired driving will save lives. 10. Manitobans deserve to have confidence in the provincial government and justice systems to make decisions that achieve true justice for victims and their families. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows. to urge the provincial government to order an out-of-province review of the prosecutor's decision to not prosecute the accomplice in the death of Jordan Reimer. This petition has been signed by Maureen Gordon, Jessica Horton, Helene Gawryluk, and many, many more fine Manitobans. Thank you.
Member for Selkirk.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba. The background to this petition is as follows. Kelly Verwey, a beloved young woman from Portage la Prairie, Manitoba, was tragically killed in a car crash caused by a repeat violent offender with a long criminal history. 2, despite repeated violations of his bail conditions, the offender was free to roam the streets and to ultimately claim Kelly's life. This tragedy was entirely preventable. 3, while the criminal code falls under federal jurisdiction, provinces have been given the responsibility for the administration of justice, allowing for meaningful provincial action on bail reform to ensure public safety. Number 4, other provinces have taken proactive steps to strengthen bail enforcement, but Manitoba has not used all the available tools to address this issue effectively. Number 5, the provincial government has the ability and the responsibility to advocate for and implement measures that protect its citizens by ensuring that repeat violent offenders are not released into our communities without proper safeguards. Number 6, immediate action is required to close the gaps in the justice system that allow dangerous criminals to remain free, which puts innocent Manitobans at risk. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows. Number 1, to urge the provincial government to take immediate and decisive action on bail reform to address serious deficits in enforcement by utilizing all available provincial mechanisms to strengthen warrant enforcement, increasing bail supervision, and opposing release of offenders, thus ensuring that repeat violent offenders are held accountable and that public safety is prioritized over leniency. And 2, to urge the provincial government to lobby the federal government to immediately repeal provisions of the criminal code that allow for the continued victimization of law-abiding Manitobans while granting repeat offenders additional rights. Honourable Speaker, this petition has been signed by Dana Birdley, Nancy Moriana, Diane Nichols, and many other fine Manitobans.
Member for Turtle Mountain.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Chair. I wish to present the following petition to the Manitoba Legislative Assembly of Manitoba. The background of this petition is as follows. Number 1, on May 1st, 2022, Jordan Reimer, age 24, was killed by an impaired driver while she was acting as a designated driver. Number 2, there are two people legally culpable of her death, the impaired driver, and the accomplice. The driver was charged, but the second criminal, the accomplice, has not been held accountable. Number 3, a concerned citizen took the keys from the impaired driver earlier in the evening to ensure he could not drive impaired. The accomplice retrieved the keys from the citizens under false pretense and knowingly provided the impaired driver with access to the vehicle. Number 4, the Winnipeg Police Services, WPS, investigation provided adequate evidence to meet the charging standard and the recommended charges to be laid against the accomplice. The Crown prosecutors declined to prosecute the accomplice. Number 5, the family of Jordan Reimer has called for the prosecution of the accomplice, and the decision is not to prosecute the reviewed independently. Number 6, as recently as 2022, there has been precedent to refer criminal files of decisions to not proceed with prosecutions to extra-provincial departments of justice for review. This has been done by Peter Nygaard's file, which ultimately led to a reversal in the decision to not to prosecute, and charges were laid. Number 7, an out-of-province review is supported by MAD Canada, MAD Manitoba, and by Manitobans. Number 8, the family has exhausted every avenue within the existing system, and in the absence of the prescribed process, when the disagreement exists on charging standards, the only option is to request an independent out-of-province review. Number 9, in December 2024, the Winnipeg Police Services reported an alarming number of impaired drivers in the holiday check stop program, extending criminal culpability beyond the drivers of those who engage in overture actions to facilitate impaired driving will save lives. Number 10, Manitoba deserves to have a confidence in this provincial government and justice system to make decisions that achieve true justice for victims and their families. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to order an out-of-province review for the prosecutor's decision is not to prosecute the accomplice in the death of Jordan Reimer. This has been signed by Preston Phillips, Evan Reffel, and Scott Mazer, and many other Manitobans.
Member for Springfield Richard.
I wish to present the following petition. The background to this petition is as follows. 1. On May 1st, 2022, Jordan Reimer, 24 years of age, was killed by an impaired driver while she was acting as a designated driver. 2. There are 2 people legally culpable for her death, the impaired driver and the accomplice. The driver was charged, but the second criminal, the accomplice, was not held accountable. 3. A concerned citizen took the keys from the impaired driver earlier in the evening to ensure he could not drive impaired. The accomplice retrieved the keys from this citizen under false pretenses and knowingly provided the impaired driver with access to the vehicle. 4. The Winnipeg Police Services, WPS, investigation provided adequate evidence to meet the charging standard and recommended charges be laid against the accomplice. The Crown prosecutors declined to prosecute the accomplice. 5. The family of Jordan Reimer was called for the prosecution of the accomplice and that the decision to not prosecute be reviewed independently. 6. As recently as 2022, there is a precedent to refer criminal files of decisions to not proceed with prosecution to extra provincial departments of justice for review. This was done with the Peter Nygaard file, which ultimately led to a reversal in the decision to not prosecute, and charges were laid. 7. An out-of-province review is supported by MAD Canada, MAD Manitoba, and by Manitobans. 8. The family has exhausted every avenue within the existing system, and in the absence of a prescribed process, when a disagreement exists on charging standards, the only option is to request an independent out-of-province review. 9. In December 2024, the Winnipeg Police Service reported an alarming number of impaired drivers in the Holiday Check Stop program, extending criminal culpability beyond the driver to those who engage in overt actions to facilitate impaired driving will save lives. 10. Manitobans deserve to have confidence in the provincial government and justice systems to make decisions that achieve true justice for victims and their families. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to order an out-of-province review of the prosecutor's decision to not prosecute the accomplice in the death of Jordan Reimer. This is signed by Justin Cause, Isaiah Maple-Stroyers, Andrew Enns, and many, many other Manitobans.
Member for Midland.
Honourable Speaker, I wish to present the following petition. The background to this petition is as follows. On May 1st, 2022, Jordan Reimer, 24 years of age, was killed by an impaired driver while she was acting as a designated driver. 2. There are 2 people legally culpable for her death: the impaired driver and the accomplice. The driver was charged, but the second criminal, the accomplice, has not been held accountable. 3. A concerned citizen took the keys from the impaired driver earlier in the evening to ensure he could not drive impaired. The accomplice retrieved the keys from this citizen under false pretenses and knowingly provided the impaired driver with access to the vehicle. 4. The Winnipeg Police Services, WPS, investigation provided adequate evidence to meet the charging standard and recommended charges to be laid against the accomplice. The Crown prosecutors designed to prosecute the accomplice. 5. The family of Jordan Reimer has called for the prosecution of the accomplice and that the decision to not prosecute be reviewed independently. 6. As recently as 2022, there is precedent to refer criminal files of decisions to not proceed with the prosecution to extra provincial departments of justice for review. This was done with the Peter Nygaard file, which ultimately led to a reversal in the decision to not prosecute, and charges were laid. 7. An out-of-province review is supported by MAD Canada, MAD Manitoba, and by Manitobans. 8. The family has exhausted every avenue within the existing system, and in the absence of a prescribed process when a disagreement exists on charging standards, the only option is to request an independent out-of-province review. 9. In December 2024, the WPS reported an alarming number of impaired drivers in the Holiday Check Stop program, extending criminal culpability beyond the driver to those who engage in overt actions to facilitate impaired driving will save lives. 10. Manitobans deserve to have confidence in the provincial government and justice systems to make decisions that achieve true justice for victims and their families. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to order an out-of-province review of the prosecutor's decision to not prosecute the accomplice in the death of Jordan Reimer. This is signed by Harmony Guzperchuk, Brendan Jensen, Donna Blazerwisky, and many, many more Manitobans.
The honourable member for Swan River.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I wish to present the following petition. To the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, the background to this petition is as follows. Number 1, on May 1st, 2022, Jordan Reimer, 24 years of age, was killed by an impaired driver while she was acting as a designated driver. Number 2, there are 2 people legally culpable for her death, the impaired driver and the accomplice. The driver was charged, but the second criminal, the accomplice, has not been held accountable. Number 3, a concerned citizen took the keys from the impaired driver earlier in the evening to ensure he could not drive impaired. The accomplice retrieved the keys from the citizen under false pretenses and knowingly provided the impaired driver with access to the vehicle. Number 4, the Winnipeg Police Service, WPS, investigation provided adequate evidence to meet the charging standard and recommended charges be laid against the accomplice. The Crown Prosecutor declined to prosecute the accomplice. Number 5, the family of Jordan Reimer has called for the prosecution of the accomplice and the decision to not prosecute be reviewed independently. Number 6, as recently as 2022, there is precedent to refer criminal files of decisions to not proceed with prosecution to extra provincial departments of justice for review. This was done with the Peter Nygaard file, which ultimately led to a reversal in the decision to not prosecute, and charges were laid. Number 7, an out-of-province review is supported by MAD Canada, MAD Manitoba, and by Manitobans. Number 8, the family has exhausted every avenue within the existing system, and in the absence of prescribed process, when a disagreement exists on charging standards, the only option is to request an independent out-of-province review. Number 9, in December 2024, the WPS reported an alarming number of impaired drivers in the holiday check stop program, extending criminal culpability beyond the driver to those who engage in overt actions to facilitate impaired driving will save lives. Number 10, Manitobans deserve to have confidence in the provincial government and justice systems to make decisions that achieve true justice for the victims and their families. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to order an out-of-province review of the prosecutor's decision to not prosecute the accomplice in the death of Jordan Reimer. This petition is signed by Sean Barrell, Derica Weiss, and Chase Krasnick, and many, many other Manitobans.
No further petitions, orders of the day, government business. The Honourable Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning.
Honourable Speaker, on House business.
Honourable Minister on House business.
In accordance with Rule 35 sub 6, I'm interrupting the budget debate today in order to resume consideration of the interim supply process.
It has been announced that the budget debate will be interrupted today to resume consideration of all stages of the interim supply process. Accordingly, we will now resume debate on second reading of Bill 45, the Interim Appropriation Act 2025, standing in the name of the Honourable Member for Borderland, who has 23 minutes remaining. Is it the will of the House for it to remain standing in the name of the member for Borderland? Agreed? No? Okay, then the member loses his place. Next member who wishes to debate the bill. Seeing no further members, is the House ready for the question? The question before the House then is pass second reading of Bill 45, the Interim Appropriation Act 2025. Is it the will of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. Then we will now move on to the, we'll resolve into the Committee of the Whole to consider and report on Bill 45, the Interim Appropriation Act 2025, for concurrence and third reading. Will the Deputy please take the chair?
Will the Committee of the Whole please come to order? We will now consider Bill 45, the Interim Appropriation Act 2025. Does the Honourable Minister of Finance have an opening statement? The Honourable Minister of Finance.
And I have 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. This legislation is required to provide the government interim spending authority for the 25-26 fiscal year. I will briefly provide a description of the provisions of the bill. Section 1 contains the definitions that apply in the Act. Subsection 2(1) specifies that the interim spending authority for operating expenditures. This provides for 75% or 9 months of operating funding in the 25-26 estimates of expenditure. Subsection 2(2) includes, as in past years, interim funding for capital investments by government departments. The amount is 90% of the sums included in Part B, capital investments of the 25-26 estimates of expenditure. Subsection 2(3) of this bill provides interim funding for lending programs and loan guarantees such as Student Aid Manitoba and mask loans to farmers. This amount of funding is 90% of the sums included in Part C, loans and guarantees of the 25-26 estimates of expenditure. Subsection 2(4) of the bill provides interim funding for capital investments to reporting entities such as school divisions and regional health authorities and the Manitoba Housing and Renewal Corp. The amount of funding is 90% of capital investments in Part D, other reporting entities, capital investments of the 25-26 estimates of expenditure. Section 3 affirms that money expended under the authority of this Act may be made through whatever department has become responsible for the program during the 25-26 fiscal year. This is consistent with past appropriation acts and makes allowances for when departmental reorganizations occur. Section 4 provides authority for the acquisition or development of inventory in the 25-26 fiscal year, and this refers to inventory that would be acquired in the 25-26 fiscal year and would be utilized and expensed in a subsequent year. Section 5 authorizes expenditures for payments occurring in the 25-26 fiscal year that are for liabilities and have been accrued in previous fiscal years, and Section 6 provides expenditure authority for commitments beyond the 25-26 fiscal year to cover the completion of projects or fulfillment of contracts that are initiated but not completed prior to March 31st, 2026. So, for example, a 3-year phone contract for a department's employee could be authorized under that provision. And finally, Section 7 specifies that the Act comes into force on royal assent. So with that, Mr. Chairperson, I present the bill to the committee.
Thank you, Minister. Does the official opposition critic have an opening statement? The Honourable Member for Midland.
Thank you very much, and I'll make my comments very brief. As I mentioned yesterday, and will reiterate my comments from yesterday, that is important for government to have the funds that it needs in order to continue to operate as we go through this process. It is disappointing that the NDP government has failed in its planning to bring forward BITSA in a timely manner, and this budget is a reflection and extension of last year's budget, and has shown that this NDP government has the inability to spend within its means and budget properly, as seen by the significant borrowing that this government is requesting. But with that, Deputy Speaker, I look forward to moving forward with the procedural aspects, and we'll have more to say during third reading. Thank you.
We shall now proceed to consider the bill clause by clause. The title and enacting clause are postponed until all other clauses have been considered. Shall Clause 1 pass? Clause 1 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 2 pass? Clause 2 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 3 pass? Clause 3 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 4 pass? Clause 4 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 5 pass? Clause 5 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 6 pass? Clause 6 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 7 pass? Clause 7 is accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass? The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass? The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill be reported? The bill, agreed. The bill shall be reported. That concludes the business before the committee. Committee rise, call in the Speaker.
The honourable member for Lodge-Modier.
Honourable Speaker, the Committee of the Whole has considered Bill 45, the Interim Appropriation Act 2025, and reports the same without amendment. I move, seconded by the honourable member for Kildonan River East, that the report of the committee be received.
It has been moved by the honourable member for Lodge-Modier, seconded by the honourable member, sorry, I didn't catch. Kildonan River East, that the report of the committee be received. Is it the will of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed, and so ordered. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move, seconded by the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning, that Bill number 45, the Interim Appropriation Act 2025, Loi de 2025 portant affectation anticipée de crédit, reported from the Committee of the Whole, be concurred in and be now read for a third time and passed.
Been moved by the Honourable Minister of Finance, seconded by the Honourable Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning, that Bill number 45, the Interim Appropriation Act 2025, reported from the Committee of the Whole, be concurred in and be now read for a third time and passed. The floor is now open for debate. Are there any? The Honourable Member for Borderland.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Thank you, Honourable Speaker. It's a pleasure to rise today to speak to this important matter. Obviously, the Chamber is dealing with taxpayer dollars, so these are always serious points of debate and points of contention. Of course, the government side is trying to tax Manitobans and spend more of their hard-earned dollars, and we're saying no. Hold on, Manitobans are finding it harder and harder and harder to make ends meet. We can't afford to pay more in taxes, and so these debates go on, but they do matter. They absolutely do matter, and it's important that Manitobans get to look at the numbers and get to look at the budget. And I sat on Treasury Board for a period of time and was always very impressed and very much admired the work of those that work in the Finance Department and Treasury Board officials who have the important task of tracking the numbers and following the money. So, I know that they worked, as they always do, worked hard on this budget document, and so it's important to have good people working within government to do that kind of work. But the decisions ultimately about where the money goes and how it's allocated, those are political decisions. Those are decisions made by the government and today made by the NDP government. And I think one of the most unfortunate decisions taken in Manitoba in recent times with regard to our provincial finances was the decision of this NDP government to turn a $270 million surplus left to them by the previous PC government into ultimately a $2 billion deficit, and then now a $1.3 billion deficit, and for this fiscal year it has a possibility of rising to $1.9 billion. So another $2 billion deficit after last year's. So that's a lot of money, and it's a lot of additional debt. And those kinds of decisions have consequences, very real consequences. And I think it's unfortunate because I think, the other side, the government side, has a different view of taxpayer dollars. We on this side of the House, my view is that taxpayer dollars belong to the taxpayer. It's the money that's earned by Manitoba taxpayers, moms and dads, individuals, many of whom work incredibly hard, get up early in the morning, and as I said, they find it hard to make ends meet. But they're working hard, paying down their mortgages, trying to put their kids through school, maybe set a little bit of money aside for a home reno or a vacation with their children. And ultimately, they're working hard, so many of them, to leave a better future and a better life for their children than they have it. And so, while they're working hard, it's important that that they have a government that has their back. And unfortunately, today they have an NDP government that is asking more and more and more of them in taxes, but at the same time is also adding to the debt burden of those future generations and the debt burden on those families and those taxpayers, those individuals all across this province who, as I said, get up and work hard and try to make something of themselves and maybe fulfill some of the dreams and some of the aspirations that they've long held. And so when you have a government that is adding to the debt burden and is increasing taxes, makes it very, very difficult for people to realize those dreams and realize those aspirations. Ultimately, decisions taken at the top have a very real and material impact on Manitoba families and Manitoba taxpayers. And so that's what I'm trying to convey here, and I think it's important that Manitobans realize that the debt burden, provincial net debt is now north of $36 billion. Debt servicing charges are in excess of $2.3 billion. Now the debt servicing charges are now the third largest department in the provincial government. That's incredibly concerning. And when I say debt servicing charges, for those listening, that's interest payments. That's just the interest that we pay on debt. So Manitobans now pay $2.3 billion collectively just to pay the interest on our provincial debt. So this is the situation that this NDP government, as I said, has taken a political decision. And as I said, I appreciate the work of the many officials within the finance department who are good people, but these are political decisions that have been taken. Decision, as I said, to turn a $270 million surplus left to this government by the previous PC government into a $2 billion deficit, and then continue on that path of high tax and high spend. And some of the things we saw in last year's budget was that the NDP eliminated the school tax rebate for commercial businesses and raised property taxes by $150 million. They're doing the same thing again in this year's budget with $182 million in projected increase in school property tax revenues. And I know the members opposite will talk about the $100 increase to the school tax rebate. But that mere $100 rebate, again, is actually, when you factor that into the finances, the government is still collecting $182 million more in school property tax revenue. So ultimately, Manitoba taxpayers are still paying more in spite of the much more, almost $200 million more, just in property taxes this year. And that's on top of a $150 million increase in property taxes last year. So, that's a huge concern, especially, as I said, at a time when so many Manitoba families are finding it hard to make ends meet, and at the same time that we're staring down the barrel of American and Chinese tariffs. This NDP government also eliminated basic personal amounts and raised income taxes on doctors, on people like doctors. We all know there's a shortage of doctors across the province. I was very concerned as a rural member when the NDP health minister axed the rural family doctor hiring initiative undertaken by the previous PC government to find and hire 150 additional family doctors for rural Manitoba. That program was initiated, was spiked, was axed, was cut. So that was a huge concern because we need more family doctors in rural Manitoba, and we need more doctors in Manitoba. They eliminated basic personal amounts and raised income taxes on people like engineers. And it's important that we attract people to Manitoba who have skills and can contribute to building our province. People like engineers. This is a disincentive to high-income earners like engineers to come to Manitoba and create a successful career and a successful professional practice. They eliminated the basic personal amount and raised income taxes on other skilled professionals. You know, and this is all at a time when Manitoba is already, every year, there's a net outflow of people from our province to other provinces. So we should be attracting people. We have so many, we've been blessed with so many, you know, so many natural resources and so many natural advantages. The potential, we have the Port of Churchill, you know, proponents of a project called the Neastonen Project have come forward and talked about and shared with legislators as well how that project could really put Manitoba on the map in terms of carrying natural resources from Western Canada through to the port of Port Nelson on the Hudson Bay and get those goods to Tidewater. Manitoba's been blessed, obviously, with minerals up north. Mining industry has so much potential, and yet at the same time, it makes no sense that Vale, which is Manitoba's mining giant up north, said last December that they were looking at exiting Manitoba. That's crazy. You know, and I know electric cars are a point of discussion these days. And one of the things you need for electric cars is nickel for the batteries and among other things. We got so many great minerals up there. So much potential for an expanded mining industry that really should be supercharged. I mean, we should be doing everything, you know, within our efforts to try to move these projects forward and incentivize investment in northern Manitoba in mining. You think of forestry, and then of course agriculture. And yet, despite all of these natural advantages in Manitoba, we have people leaving the province to look for greener pastures. And that's because of our high tax rate. Manitoba is one of the highest tax provinces in Canada. And it's not right that people are leaving this province to look for greener pastures. Ultimately, we're losing out. And I just think if the government got its fiscal house in order, focused on running balanced budgets, and cut taxes to incentivize our young people to stay here, to incentivize our workers to stay here, and also to be able to earn more money. You know, ultimately, I think that should be the goal of government, is to secure and to safeguard the personal liberties of and freedoms of the people that we represent. That's ultimately the role of government, and not to get in the way, not to interfere, but simply to allow, to make it easier for Manitobans to be able to strike out and take risks, put capital at risk, and invest their hard-earned dollars in a business idea, or, you know, build a new home, or, as I said, put their children through education. All of these things that ultimately work for the betterment of our province. But, you know, as I said, that's much more difficult to do when you're paying, for instance, almost $200 million more this year in property taxes. There's the gas tax, which was a bit of a bait and switch there on the part of the NDP. You know, they really sold that to Manitobans, and then and now today we're paying a 12.5 cent gas tax, and so you know, that's got an impact as well, because as I said earlier, I mean, anytime you cut taxes, that gets priced into the market, that gets priced into your household budget. And then when those taxes come back on a year later, as happened with the gas tax, then that leaves Manitoba families short that much. So these things all work to disincentivize growth, to disincentivize and discourage investment in Manitoba. And so we're seeing the consequences. We're seeing the consequences of that today. And I just wanted to go through some of those areas as well. We saw, as I said, the NDP hit Manitobans with the largest gas tax hike in history on January 1st of this year, driving up prices at the pump over 30 cents. I know for Manitoba families who filled up at the pump and saw that, wow, we're paying $1.60. We're paying $1.64 for gas. Why is that? Well, that's because the provincial gas tax was reinstated. And the NDP's reinstated gas tax will see the average family pay $526 more in taxes this year. Auto pack rates are increasing by 5.7% on April 1st. And that's interesting because it was the previous PC government left Manitobans with record rebates, auto pack rebates, in the order of over $500 rebates. And I know so many people appreciated that at a time, as I say, when it's harder and harder to make ends meet. And now, somehow the situation has changed after the NDP took power and fired the board and now installed their own individuals there. Auto pack rates are now increasing. So that's interesting. We were supposed to get a rebate, and now Manitobans are left with a $5.7% increase in auto pack rebates on April 1st. So somehow we turned a surplus at MPI. Somehow the NDP turned a surplus at MPI into a $130 million loss. So, as a colleague of mine says, it's the magic math of the NDP, and you don't want to have that kind of math. You absolutely don't want that kind of math. The average family of 4 is expected to spend $800 more on groceries this year, according to the latest Canada Food Price Report. And food prices are expected to increase by 3 to 5% in 2025, with the most significant rises projected in the meat category, ranging from 4 to 6%. And I keep on thinking, there's got to be some silver linings. Ultimately, we have got to take this tariff crisis and turn it into something ultimately positive. And what I mean by that is we should be we got a massive pork industry in this province. It's too bad that this government won't champion it. The canola industry, the potato industry is really significant. But we have Manitoba is home to so many great agricultural products. Frankly, we shouldn't be looking at these steep increases in food prices. If anything, these tariffs should be encouraging everyone to work together to build, as I said, our own slaughterhouses and agricultural processing plants and whatnot, so that we can take the goods that we already produce here. We're very good. Manitoba farmers and Manitoba business people, Manitoba workers are so good at producing all of these goods. We should be benefiting from that. We should call it the Manitoba advantage. Because we're blessed with so many great, absolutely, the Manitoba advantage. And this government should patent that. Absolutely. I'm a little bit concerned about how they manage that because I'm not done my list here. And it's a pretty discouraging list. I'll tell you, it's a pretty discouraging report card when you look at just the damage that 18 months of NDP leadership have wrought on this province. But in spite of all the blessings and natural advantages that Manitoba enjoys, and in spite of all the great people who live here, and all the hard work they put into their industries, and in spite of our abilities, Manitobans, to grow great products and whatnot, we have 50,000 Manitobans relying on a food bank every month. So that I can't get over that. And I guess, right, yeah, that's the whole city of Brandon. The member for Brandon West says, and he's a champion for his area, but that's the whole city of Brandon, to put that into perspective. When I read that stat just a while ago, and that's why I've mentioned it a couple times in debate, because I can't get over it. 50,000 Manitobans now relying on a food bank every month, and I've spoken to some of these people, even in my own constituency, and my heart goes out to them, you know, that they rely on a food bank every month, and I just think these are people who don't have time to pay attention to politics and follow all the debates. They're so busy getting up early in the morning and going to work and trying to make ends meet and trying to figure out how they're going to put food on the table for their children. And I listen to them and I'm thinking, wow, my heart breaks, you know, and what a responsibility we have as legislators to try to do something about that. And again, not get in the way. I think too often government is too interventionist. What we need to do is actually roll back the tax burden. Now's the time for tax cuts. Now's the time to unleash Manitoba's potential. Now's the time to unleash the potential of Manitoba income earners to be able to go out there. Now's the time to unleash the potential of Manitoba business owners and farmers. Now's the time to roll back, expedite projects, encourage people. If you've got a great idea and you're willing to put capital at risk, we're behind you. We're not going to try to kill the job, your plans and aspirations through regulations. We're not going to try to kill it through high taxes. We're going to get government out of the way. And I think if we took that approach, many, if not all, of these 50,000 Manitobans would be able to earn enough income to be able to support their families without having to go to a food bank. According to the latest M&P Consumer Debt Index, though half of Manitoba residents, 49%, indicated they are $200 or less away from insolvency. Nearly a third say they are already insolvent, a significant jump of 11 points, thanks to this NDP government. And so, as I said, the rising auto pack rates, the rising the gas taxes, the rising property taxes, the rising debt, and the rising debt interest charges that we pay, these things are all sucking the life out of the Manitoba taxpayer. And the reality is there is only one Manitoba. There's only one taxpayer. There is only one taxpayer. You've got a money-hungry Liberal government in Ottawa, and they are sucking the taxpayer dry for all they're worth. You've got a socialist, Marxist, NDP government on this side, and they are sucking every last drop they can out of Manitoba taxpayers. And then you have school boards and municipalities across this province that also have to fund their priorities. And I think it's unfortunate that they're the last ones to the trough, I think, because they're closest to the people, and they're the ones who actually are trying to provide the services, you know, snow clearing, building roads and things like that. And in the meantime, you've got a federal and provincial government here, that a Liberal NDP government that are frittering away tax dollars. So these things have all led to a set of, as I said, very serious and deteriorating circumstances on a number of fronts, and we can pick them apart one by one. But we see how unemployment has risen to over 6%. We see how U.S. exports have declined 6.6% in 2024. That's before the tariffs. China exports declined 11% in 2024 before tariffs. Again, this is before tariffs. So exports were declining before the tariffs came on. So that doesn't account for all the damage that's going to be done even with the tariff uncertainty or after they come on. And as a result, business bankruptcies have increased by 23%. Consumer insolvencies are up by 4.4%. And as I said, Manitoba has the highest inflation in Canada now at 3.5%, with some of the highest increases in food and housing costs in the country. Manitoba has fallen to last place in planned energy, mining, forestry investments over the next 10 years, and Manitoba has fallen to last place in the Canada Federation of Independent Business Red Tape Business Rankings. So it's a pretty dismal picture that the NDP government has got us into at a really bad time. As I said, when we're Manitoba families and business owners are staring, and farmers are staring down the threat of these Chinese and American tariffs. I sure hope this NDP government can turn it around. I hope they keep a listening ear. We'll definitely be holding them to account. We'll be opposing their fiscal plans for this province. Thank you.
The honourable member for Turtle Mountain.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I'm here to put a few words when it comes to the appropriation bill that we're putting, the NDP are putting forward here. And the importance here is to put a few words, and especially as a MLA that represents the Westman. The Westman is so important that I've always said, even when we're in government, sometimes I always had to fight for the Westman because we are so far close to Saskatchewan. And we are also actually competing with Saskatchewan when it comes to a lot of our budgetary, when we have competing for investments from around the world, we compete with Saskatchewan, we compete with Alberta and a lot of our other provinces. And right now, more than important than any time in our time that I was in this legislature is now. The importance here when it comes to the tariffs that are being put on by Donald Trump, this is devastating especially for my area, for the Westman. And in this budget, Westman wasn't even mentioned in this budget, Honourable Speaker. And I know my former colleague from Spruce Woods had indicated that in one of his questions that there was nothing that was mentioned for the Westman. The Westman here is so important that the fact is Brandon, who is our second largest city in the province, wasn't even mentioned. They have just as much crime as the city of Winnipeg per capita. And the fact is, it's getting worse, Honourable Speaker. And the importance is rural crime it's just such a big factor here. And there is nothing here that showed an increase in crime, actually increase in preventing crime in this budget, Honourable Speaker. And when it comes to farmers, you know, they're the ones that actually drive this economy. And the importance of, especially in the southwest corner, we have oil, we have the oil industry. We compete with Saskatchewan, and right now with the amount of taxes that are being increased by this NDP government, well, our education property taxes are going way up. The educational taxes just on land and people's and individuals' houses are in some school divisions are going up more than 17, 18%. In some cases, the municipalities are saying that's going up to almost 25% in some of the municipalities when you look at their mill rate, because they need to also operate too in the black. So it's so important that this budget does not address a lot of those concerns, especially in Western Manitoba. And the other thing that we found that when we were in government, we never had a doctor shortage in Western Manitoba. Now we have an epidemic of doctors shortages now that we had back in the Selinger days of the NDP. I remember the ER in Verdun, Manitoba was actually closed half the summer because of the lack of doctors that the Selinger government didn't have. This Canoe government is doing the same thing. They're basically chasing out the doctors because the fact is, if you're in Saskatchewan, your tax rate is a lot better. They're now going to eliminate the $200,000. Anybody that's making over $200,000, the personal exemption is going to be eroded right off the books for any doctors. And these are doctors who are making over $200,000, Honourable Speaker. Those doctors are going to go somewhere where they're going to be taxed less. And then when it comes to their property, any house that's over $385,000, Honourable Speaker, are going to have a tax increase in their property taxes. And this is very concerning to especially to attract a doctor in rural Manitoba, especially in Western Manitoba. And the fact is also, too, is that there has been, when it comes to infrastructure, transportation infrastructure, I was a minister where we put a 5-year budget. And a lot of those projects that were supposed to be happening last year were delayed. And what happens when they're delayed? That means that less money that's spent in infrastructure, Honourable Deputy Speaker. And so this is very concerning that, you know, when it comes to transportation infrastructure, that is the first thing that basically gets underspent and everything gets ballooned. I know the NDP government, the Selinger days, the dark days of the NDP. I remember when when every department was overspent, except for infrastructure. They underspent infrastructure number of years in a row to a point where there was over $1 billion in the last 4 years of the Selinger government that wasn't spent on infrastructure. Honourable Speaker, you could have put a number of interchanges on the perimeter highway. That could have been a freeway by now, Honourable Speaker. And we were going to do it, but the other project that I would like to see happening, and it's not happening, was the start of the McGillivray Boulevard interchange. And right now, there is no signs of any kind of surveyors, stakes out there to indicate that that is going to be the next project, Honourable Speaker. This is a failure to the people that live around the city of Winnipeg, the millions of people million plus people that are now call the Winnipeg area their home. And as the population increases, if it does increase with this NDP government, because quite a stagnant population back in the days of the Selinger government, this is important that infrastructure is spent, especially around the city, the greater Winnipeg, and even our transportation hubs, going to the Trans-Canada Highway right now. There has been no activity in the last 18 months on the Trans-Canada Highway for any kind of improvements. Highway 75, it's been done thanks to our government. We started that project and we continue it, and hopefully they'll continue south of Morris, Honourable Speaker. The importance here is making sure that our farmers are taken care of. They're going to look at, a lot of farmers are bigger now. They're looking at payroll taxes. They're looking at land transfer taxes. As soon as they buy any land, they have to pay an extra tax on land transfer taxes. And then when it comes to educational taxes, they're going to be bombarded by education taxes. Then on top of it, they're going to be having tariffs on canola from China and the U.S. And when it comes to the question that one of my colleague from Portage La Prairie brought forward about potato farmers, his industry in the Portage area is so reliant on food processing, especially potatoes. So many potatoes, and even in Carberry, so many potatoes. Most of McDonald's in Western Canada, in Canada and in western parts of Chicago, they get their French fries from Carberry. We had a tour. A colleague of mine from Agassiz gave us a tour, organized a tour for us, and we were able to discuss what the impact of their industry is. And the impact right now is trying to get more producers for potatoes. But what's happened right now is a lot of potatoes, again, a lot of products get shipped to the United States. So everything that, if it's French fries to Chicago, to anywhere in Western United States, they're going to be charged a 25% tariff on our potato production. That's going to impact Carberry, which is an Agassiz, and Portage La Prairie. So it's impacts to rural Manitoba. This is going to really, and if rural Manitoba doesn't prosper and thrive, our oil industry, our agriculture industry, our mining industry, we're the ones that created the first potash mine in Saskatchewan, in Manitoba. And now it's like it's going to be impacted by the amount of tariffs that we're going to have now, that the U.S. is going to be slapped in us, and this is going to be impact to our whole economy and Manitoba. So these are really big concerns that we have here now too, and like I said, my colleague from Borderlands indicated that I remember being in cabinet, we gave this NDP government a surplus, a $275 million surplus in the fiscal year of 2022-23. And the fact is now it ballooned into over $1 billion deficit. And it's kind of funny, Honourable Speaker, when we usually did budgets out there, we actually say that, hey, this is what our deficit's going to be, or surplus, and we actually improve it by the time the year is end. But I always find when back in the Selinger days, and even with this government, is whenever they come up with a budget, but they're projecting about a $750 million deficit, you know darn well it's going to be a lot higher than that. It's going to be probably well over $1 billion. My mother-in-law used to always say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The good intentions that they're going to have a $750 million, but it never happens, Honourable Speaker, because they mismanage it. They like to spend money. They like to tax more. And the thing is, Honourable Speaker, when I was part of the cabinet, we had the Economic Committee of Cabinet. I represented transportation. There were many departments, Honourable Speaker, when it came to our Economic Committee of Cabinet. And we had persons like individuals that were able to sell the province, our advantages to our province. how we were competitive with our partners in Saskatchewan. When it comes to competitiveness with taxation, we're going to lose out now on trying to attract the businesses in Manitoba. And then when the NDP came out with their last budget, it said, join a union, become a middle class. The fact is that scares a lot of investors who want to come to Manitoba. We kind of showcase Manitoba as a place to come and do business, Honourable Speaker. We had one of the most cleanest energy when it comes to Manitoba Hydro. We had our lowest, we're reducing our tax rate, we're reducing our debt. We were in the place where we're going to showcase this province. And people were looking at us. We were on the radar for coming to have outside investment come into this province, but now that's been reversed now. When you go out there and put the message out there, join a union, become a middle class, that scares a lot of investors, a lot of businesses that want to come here. And the fact is, I know that how they operate Crown corporations. Like, I remember being a critic for this recently for MPI. I was basically we gave rebates when we were in government. I had when we come into opposition, I asked the president of MPI about the circumstances of how healthy the financial situation is for the MPI. She basically said there was going to be a rebate coming up. And that was in March of 2024. And then by the time we got into September, towards the end of the actual fiscal year ending, when it came out in the reports in September, it showed a major deficit, a loss, over millions of dollars of $100 million loss for the Crown Corporation. And the concern now is that there was an increase in MPI rates, and that's very concerning to Manitobans who are actually having challenges when it came to inflation, and now having to be taxed heavily when it comes to this new NDP government here. It's like I always say it was in the business world, in markets. We always said that history doesn't repeat itself, but does rhyme. But I think in government it seems is the same way. History doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. So the good intentions of this NDP government trying to come up with a $750 million deficit, I know darn well it's going to be over $1 billion by the time we get to the end of the year. We don't know what the storm clouds are going to be when it comes to the tariffs down the road, how the impact is going to be for manufacturers here in this province. It's going to be impacting, and the more important here, I know Brian Pallister, who was our first premier that I was involved with, he wanted to cut down barriers between interprovincial barriers that we had. He came and wanted to talk to all the premiers. He tried to push that, but there was no interest at the time. If we would have done that back in the day when he came forward with the premiers and the prime minister at the time, we could have been in a lot better shape. And the biggest thing, Honourable Speaker, is the missed opportunity that this federal Liberal government that did to us. I would say Justin Trudeau's responsibility, his philosophy was less oil for and more green energy. But the fact is we missed the opportunity. There was an Energy East pipeline that was going to be developed. And it was going to be so important for cheap Western reduced oil prices that we get in Western Canada versus what they get in Texas. We could have been back in self-sufficiency for our country, Honourable Speaker. We could have had an East Energy pipeline. I know Moosomin was going to be a pumping station that would have created a lot of jobs in our region. Even though it was in Saskatchewan, people go back and forth. I know a lot of people who live in Russell or Binscarth area or St. Lazare that go to the potash mines to work in Saskatchewan. This pumping station would have employed over 200 people, but that was canceled. And meanwhile, Quebec still takes oil from trains going through there, almost blowing up half a community. Lac-Mégantic was one of the communities that were almost destroyed by an explosion. And the pipeline that could have went through Quebec could have been self-sufficient for Quebec and for the Maritimes. And then when the war happened in Russia and Ukraine, the conflict, there could have been opportunities of us shipping oil from Eastern Canada to Europe, to making sure that we could have had a revenue. And I remember some of the analysts were saying that if we could have had that East Energy pipeline created, we missed up opportunities of actually earning, missed opportunity that they were indicating was tens of billions of dollars a year, or maybe a month. They said it was a lot of money that we lost. We left it on the table, Honorable Speaker. This could have given us more money, revenue to pay for a lot of our health care. There's a shortfall when it comes to the federal government paying for health care, their transfer payments for sharing on our health care. At one time, they were equal partners with health care now, and now they're barely giving us 25%. And where their health care used to be 30% back in the 90s for health care of our total budget, it's now ballooning to almost half of our budget now, Honorable Speaker. The opportunity that we could have gotten from the oil sales, we could have also created new energies too, like Norway does. They sell a lot of oil, but they bring that revenue back into their country and produce different type of energies. And that we could have been more self-sufficient when it came to new energies by getting the revenues that we got from the sale of oil. Because someone else is going to be it. And you know what the amazing part is? We import so much of our oil from Saudi Arabia and the Middle East to a point that the carbon footprint of shipping oil across the world does not make sense, Honorable Speaker. I'm not quite sure where the federal government got those ideas from, that when it comes to pipelines, it's the most efficient way, the most cleanest way to ship oil from one region to another. So, Honorable Speaker, this is I'm wanting to give these few words on the record here because this is important to our farmers. It is important to our business people, our manufacturers in the province of Manitoba. It is important to my constituency who straddles around the U.S. border. It really depends on trade with the U.S., and this is really going to be impacted. But they also provide a lot of revenue. I remember my predecessor, the Honourable MLA for Springfield Rashad. I remember I took him on tour when he was Minister of Transportation. I went around Turtle Mountain, some of their roads that were not done by the previous NDP government, that we had to catch up and actually start investing in that region. And I remember he said, oh my God, these are third world highways. But I said, look around. These are first world incomes that come off these highways. So, Honourable Speaker, I think it's so important that this budget still continues investing in our trade and commerce grids that I put forward in our 5-year budget when we came forward. I will keep on top of things, making sure that these projects still continue, because I will be going back to the Transportation Minister, the current Transportation Minister, to say, where are these projects? And I'll talk to every constituency, all the local governments out there, to making sure that these projects were on the list for the 5-year budget. That's what the heavy construction industry wanted, and we were going to give that to them. So I'm hoping that they will continue to honor that trade and commerce grid, when it comes to the corridors, which is the Trans-Canada Highway, the Perimeter Highway, and Highway 75, and the Highway 6 to the north. Honourable Speaker, it's important that this continues to be, they invest that money that they're saying for infrastructure goes into infrastructure, not to other polluting departments. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Brandon West.
Well, thank you, Honourable Speaker, and it gives me great pleasure to rise in the House today and put a few words on the record regarding the Interim Appropriation Act, and certainly have a few things to put forward regarding this budget that was introduced by government. Quite concerning, as always, when it comes to crime initiatives and the safety of our province, the safety of our communities. And as the member for Turtle Mountain alluded to, rural crime is becoming a significant issue across Manitoba.
You bet.
Investments, as we see, are happening in urban areas, and rightfully so, because there's a large concentration of people there, and crime is noted. But because in the rural areas, there's the dispersed population and the opportunity exists for crime, that's why we have to see significant contributions being done to rural crime watch, rural crime problems, and rural crime emphasis. So making sure that our RCMP are properly funded and making sure that staffing is highlighted would have been something that I thought would have been paramount in this budget. But again, nothing at all to speak about any of those safety areas for any of our rural area. Urban, of course, has been taken care of, particularly in the city of Winnipeg. And, you know, it is lost on me that the majority of the NDP's votes come from Winnipeg. So, you know, they're feeding that vote-rich area for themselves and making sure that it's aligned. But the rest of the province is being thrown to the wolves, so to speak. So, you know, we have to make sure that we hold government to account when it comes to safety in our province and the safety of all of our citizens within this. So, again, I looked at some of the interesting comments that have been made by many of my colleagues on this side. And what I'm finding, because I really was apolitical until I took up this position, I remained balanced. I'd work with any government that was there. So I didn't focus a lot on policies and processes. But what I am finding is there's a significant difference between this side of the House and the NDP side of the House. And whereas the NDP like to tax and tax some more and add more taxes onto taxes that are out there to collect revenue to drive the province. But what I'm learning as a grandparent to 5 now is that my grandchildren and likely their children will be paying for these decisions that this government is making today into their future and as they go forward, working in these economies. You know, and listening to a member from Borderland talk about our youth and how the number of people in our province are outward migrating because they don't find the abilities here for the higher paying jobs, but when they do find them, guess what? They're taxed. They're taxed at a much higher rate, $200,000 or more, and those individuals suffer an additional tax. And I look at people in this chamber like our pages that will be our future leaders, Honourable Speaker, and they're the ones that are going to suffer under this regime because they're the ones that will seek higher paying jobs, jobs that will support our economy, that will support their families, that will support Manitoba's infrastructure. But yet they're the ones that are going to be paid significantly and then taxed at a much higher rate than what would happen if they went to another province. So we're trying to attract people here. We're trying to have inward migration. We're not trying to have outward migration. And it seems that this government is working against that and really against the province of Manitoba and any of our youth that want to have an opportunity as they move forward here. What really surprised me, and again, I didn't take a lot of note to this because I just worked daily and put in my time, made sure that our communities were safe, but what really strikes me is a $2.3 billion debt servicing that we have to do. $2.3 billion. It's equal to the 3rd largest government department. And that's just debt services. Imagine if we had that money in our accounts that we could put into reducing our debt, or better yet, into services that Manitobans expect from us without costing them endlessly and having to have more taxes added on to them by this government. You know what? We look at the promises that were made by the NDP to align and shore up the school taxes and help school divisions. But instead, what are we seeing? Some areas as high as 25.5% increase in their school taxes because the NDP failed to provide adequate funding to those school boards. I look in my own city, 6.78%, I believe it is, in the city of Brandon. And that's on top of rising city taxes. So it's just continuing under this government to cost Manitobans much, much more. And, you know, it is concerning. I have residents from Brandon West, and I'm sure across the aisle from Brandon East get a lot of calls too about these concerns. And, you know, when we look at double-digit raises in the taxes, when we look at city as well as school divisions, and then taxes going up on many of the other areas, adding a 12 1.5 cent gas tax, largest increase in history of the gas tax coming in here from this government. And people are concerned. People are paying more. It's going to cost the average family $500 more per year, and groceries. There was a promise, I believe it was the Premier himself that said he was going to stand up for Manitobans and make sure that laws are brought into place so that we could make sure, that we could make sure that affordability is brought to Manitobans. Now they're going to be paying $500 to $600 more for their grocery bills as costs just keep rising. Honourable Speaker, it's on the backs of these hardworking Manitobans that really they have to burden this. Yeah. Now we look at food bank use. When we're talking about affordability and we're talking about groceries and we're talking about the insanity of the rising costs under this government, it has led 50,000 people to make use of food banks within our province. And as the member from Borderland had said, that's the size of a city of Brandon. Wow. Using food banks across this province. We're better than that, Honourable Speaker. This province is much better, and if we could reduce the burden, if we could increase our economy, get more jobs out there, decrease our unemployment rate, we would have people working and driving our economy, not depending on food banks and the generosity of Manitobans, because we are very, very generous people. Absolutely. Donating to these food banks and donating to many help services across our province. You bet. They would be out there, their ability to work, to thrive, and to live in a prosperous Manitoba. And with that, Honourable Deputy Speaker, I just want to really put forward that Manitobans are scared, they're worried, they're concerned. $200 separates many, many families from being unable to survive in today's world. $200, and that is not a lot of money. No. When we look at today's day and age. $200 to insolvency for these families. Many are already there, and it's been driven by this NDP government and their agenda to tax at every turn of the road. So, Honourable Deputy Speaker, I hope Manitobans come to see the light and know that they're being tricked, they're being fooled, and they are being taxed to death. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Midland.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I'm pleased to rise today and reflect on this interim supply bill during third reading, and many of my comments yesterday will again be reiterated today, as I think it is critical to reiterate some of those key comments that I put on the record yesterday. I do want to make note, Honourable Speaker, that interim supply is important. It's important to keep the lights on, it's important to pay civil staff, but it also is an opportunity to reflect on the pattern of this NDP government between last year's budget and this year's budget. And I said this extensively yesterday. This year's budget is an extension of last year's budget because there isn't really that much new in this year's budget. We saw a lot of recycled promises that have been made for over 17 months by this NDP government. And what we have seen throughout these 17 months is an NDP government that puts a lot of words on paper and in the media, but has an issue and has a problem with actually putting implementation to those words. This seems to be a government who does not have a lot of follow-through on those promises that they make. This is also today an opportunity, Honourable Speaker, to ensure that we do get an accurate portrayal of what this government has brought forward in this year's budget and this year's interim supply bill. And $14 billion in borrowing is a testament that this NDP government spends too much and cannot stick to their budget. So yesterday I put a lot of words on the record regarding this NDP government's inability to properly fiscally manage this province's books. And this is a pattern that we've seen over the past 17 months with this government of their inability. for fiscal management. So why do I bring up this pattern during interim supply and third reading of this bill, Honourable Speaker? And Honourable Speaker, it's because I can say, and what we saw with the budget last week, is there are a lot of inconsistencies. So I'm just going to go through a few of those inconsistencies very quickly, Honourable Speaker, because what the NDP says in a budget bill and what they say to the public are two very different things. So first, let's just look at last week's budget for an example. There was no clarity on the exact economic impacts of Manitoba families and industries are facing. As I've mentioned, I mentioned here in the House, I mentioned during budget debate, and I mentioned yesterday, is other provinces have actually given a realistic representation of what those numbers actually are. We've seen Nova Scotia, we've seen Alberta, most recently we've seen Saskatchewan give a clear picture of the financial revenue projections that those provinces are looking to bring in. What we saw during this NDP's budget was not a true account of the economic realities that Manitoba is facing. You know, another inconsistency, Honourable Speaker, is there's no clarity on how this government actually plans to spend the contingency budgets for tariffs that they've put aside. And I will say again, we need to ensure that those dollars do not become a slush fund for this minister and this government's spending for their interest groups and whatever comes at their will. Those dollars are specifically for producers, farmers, and Manitoba businesses and families that are struggling with the direct impact of U.S. and Chinese tariffs. And we need to ensure that those dollars go directly to those individuals that are facing these very difficult times. Third, Honourable Speaker, is there is no credible plan to actually balance this budget. This NDP government is living on a cloud if they think that they can continue to spend beyond their means and still balance the budget in 2 years. They are still increasing taxes, yet running a best case scenario deficit of $800 million, where in all likelihood it could be up to $1.9 billion deficit, because this is the pattern of this NDP government over 17 months. They spend, they tax, borrow on the backs of Manitobans and future generations. Now, as it relates specifically to borrowing on the backs of Manitobans, debt servicing has become the third largest department within the government. It has now overtaken the Department of Families. $66 million more in debt servicing costs. That is interest payments going directly to Wall Street and Bay Street lenders instead of back into the pockets of Manitobans. And Manitobans, their pockets are stretched. They are financially stretched under 17 months of this NDP government. We saw in last year's budget, they increased taxes on Manitobans, and they've done it again. And this time, we're headed into an economic recession. The minister and the premier have claimed belt tightening, yet the numbers do not reflect this. This is another inconsistency, Honourable Speaker. At a time when we are facing a possible recession, and economic uncertainties that all Manitobans are feeling right now today, they're actually increasing their spending at 7% at a time of significantly high interest rates and during an affordability crisis. Honourable Speaker, they're actually giving themselves higher salaries while taxing hardworking Manitobans and taking money right out of hardworking Manitobans' pockets. What the NDP is saying in their budget and what the NDP says in their interim supply bill are two different things from what the actual numbers reflect. A rosy, unrealistic budget does not reflect the economic realities that Manitobans are facing today. And let's look at what this government's basing their growth on. High revenue growth projections at a time of economic uncertainty that will actually collapse if we have U.S. and Chinese tariffs over the long term. High federal transfer projections, $650 million increase is what they're projecting at a time when not only we're going through a federal election, but Manitoba is heavily reliant on successful provinces bringing in that revenue who are also subject to U.S. and China tariffs. In addition, this minister is projecting high net income of Manitoba Hydro at the same time when Manitoba Hydro needs to spend billions more on capital infrastructure upgrades and maintaining existing infrastructure, not taking into account any other sort of crisis that might hit Manitoba, like droughts that we have experienced in the past that also impact the revenue that comes into Manitoba Hydro and, as a result, the Manitoba government. So as I mentioned, Honourable Speaker, this NDP has painted a very rosy sunny days picture within their budget for the province, but it is unrealistic. TD, RBC, expert economists have said it is a rosy outlook and is unrealistic expectations for what the province of Manitoba should be looking at right now as a result of the economic realities of US and China tariffs and the economic realities of the affordability crisis that Manitobans are facing. This NDP government, over 17 months, this is a pattern, Honourable Speaker, they have not been taking this cost of living seriously. And Manitobans are now seeing this reflected again in this year's budget. Higher taxes, higher deficits, more borrowing at a time when Manitobans, Manitoba families, and businesses can least afford it. So, Honourable Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to put and reiterate a few of these critical comments on the record today, and I look forward to speaking more about the failings of this government and this NDP government, because if the past 17 months is any indication of to what's to come in the future, Manitobans should be deeply concerned. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Are there any further members wishing to debate? Is the House ready for the question? The question before the House is concurrence and third reading of Bill number 45, the Interim Appropriation Act 2025. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. The motion is accordingly passed. The House will now prepare for royal assent.
I just wanted to make sure. And that's good.
I'm in the midst.
I didn't mean to read it, but I was just like, I know.
It's okay. Like some.
We're so nosy.
Don't fall.
What is it? The thing you don't know is like how myself is if you do, like she doesn't know all the events I do because I prioritize them. They just see the one time when I do that.
I give them a few more minutes before.
Like, come back, come back, come back, come back.
Her Honor, the Administrator.
Your Honor, the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba asks Your Honor to accept the following bill.
Number 45, the Interim Appropriation Act 2025. Loi de 2025 portant affectation anticipée de crédit.
In His Majesty's name, the Administrator of the Province of Manitoba thanks the Legislative Assembly and assents to this bill.
The opposition House Leader.
Thank you. I think it's very important that our attendance here is noted, and I think we're a little shy. I'd like a quorum count, please.
A quorum count has been called. So in order for a quorum count to be held, there has to be a 1-minute bell. We will be adjourned before the 1-minute bell is done ringing, so it seems rather pointless.
We can't comply.
Can't comply. We can ring the bell and
We'll rise by the time we're done.
the hour being 5 o'clock, this House is adjourned and stands adjourned until 1:30 tomorrow.